Chapter 36:17. The discussions and rumors of the Taotai clan were somewhat different from the truth. At least the vast majority of the clansmen did not understand the clan leader's true thoughts. All the clansmen thought that clan leader Tao Yongxing did not want to become enemies with the dragon race and would definitely give Long Tian a satisfactory explanation. But in reality, Tao Yongxing had already sharpened the butcher's knife and dug the trap. Tao Yongxing was a very shrewd powerhouse. Even though the greed, cunning and brutality in the Taotai clan's bones could not be changed. But he was very good at doing superficial work. His discipline and restraint of ordinary clansmen were also mainly persuasion and education. In the long run, even the Taotai clan felt that the Taotai clan scrupulously abided by their duties and was hospitable, never causing trouble, let alone bullying other races. However, only the deacons, elders and priests who were strong enough and had high enough status understood the true meaning of clan leader Tao Yongxing. That was, they could commit crimes and plunder greedily, but they must plan before acting. No matter what, they could not let the news spread and damage the reputation of the Taotai clan. Regarding this, the deacons and elders of the Taotai clan admired and agreed from the bottom of their hearts. If Tao Yongxing did not request this, the Taotai clan's reputation would be ruined very quickly if they were allowed to do as they pleased, plundering crazily and bullying other races based on their nature. In a few years' time, the Taotai clan would become the scum that everyone shouted at, hated and besieged by countless demons. If that was the case, the Taotai clan would be finished no matter how powerful it was. Tao Yongxing did this to protect the Taotai clan's 10,000 years of foundation. For close to 10,000 years, the Taotai clan's powerhouses murdered at least hundreds of thousands of foreign race powerhouses. But the outside world only spread some groundless, specious stories and discussions, but there was very little real evidence. Many demons did not have a good impression of the Taotai clan and were very wary, but they could not produce evidence that the Taotai clan harmed the demons. This was Tao Yongxing's credit. Inside Wuxian Palace, the Grand Elder and the 4 elders had been sitting in the palace all along, monitoring that secret chamber in the depths of the palace at all times. A full 3 days had passed and everyone did not relax for a moment. Fortunately, the door of that secret chamber was also tightly shut and had never been opened. The few elders did not care about what Ji Tianxing was doing in the secret chamber. They only knew that when the clan leader ordered to see Ji Tianxing, his death date would arrive. Inside the divine pagoda, spacetime was distorted. Ji Tianxing was sitting cross-legged under the blood flame sacred tree, concentrating on cultivating and healing his injuries. Only 3 days had passed in the outside world, but he had already been in seclusion for 5 months. In the past 5 months he had refined Tao Changji and Tao Wangchuan's godheads. Not only had his strength increased, but he had also gained 5 new types of divine Dao laws. Although Tao Wangchuan and Tao Zhangji were both low-level divine kings, refining their godheads didn't give Ji Tianxing much of an improvement. However, both of them were from the Taotai clan, and the innate ability of the Taotai clan was to devour all things. From ancient times until now, there was a legend circulating in the dragon realm. It was said that the Taotai clan was the greediest clan in the world and could devour everything for their own use. They were like bottomless pits that could never be filled. Not to mention the tens of thousands of monsters in the dragon realm, even heaven and earth would be devoured by Taotai. It could be seen from this how powerful the Taotai clan's devouring talent was. Coincidentally, when Ji Tianxing ascended to the divine world back then, he unexpectedly obtained the devouring talent in the ascension pool. For so many years he had also relied on the devouring talent to refine countless cultivation resources and rapidly increased his strength. This was virtually exactly the same as the Taotai clan's innate divine ability. Hence he refined Tao Wangchuan and Tao Zhangji's godheads and deprived the 2 of their devouring talent. Fusing with his devouring talent, it made his devouring divine ability go up a level, becoming even more powerful and perfect. In a short 1 month's time, Ji Tianxing completed this matter. In the following 4 months he had been using the devouring talent all along, devouring cultivation resources frenziedly. Regardless of whether it was the blood flame sacred tree's divine fruits, or the divine stones, source stones, divine pills and various divine artifacts stored in his interspatial ring, they were all devoured and refined by him. In 4 months' time the cultivation resources stored in his interspatial ring actually decreased by 20%. Cultivation resources worth 50 billion divine stones were devoured by him just like that. At the thought of this, Ji Tianxing's heart ached and he was reluctant to part with them. However, after devouring so many resources, he was very satisfied with the benefits and results that he had obtained. Not only had he recovered from his injuries, but he had also recovered to his peak condition. His strength had also increased by 6 times. Naturally, he had reached the peak of the 5th level of the Divine King realm. Ever since Ji Tianxing had recovered to the Divine King realm, this was the first time his strength had increased at such a rapid speed. Previously, when he had broken through to the 5th level of the Divine King realm, it was when he was on his way to the Xuanji Grotto. In less than a month he had reached the peak of the 5th level of the Divine King realm. If news of such a terrifying speed of growth were to spread, it would definitely shock countless divine kings. Even Ji Tianxing himself felt a wave of worry and relief. Fortunately, I am a reincarnated cultivator. I was a peak divine king in my previous life. Now that my strength has increased so rapidly, my body and soul can still withstand it. Other divine kings, even the experts of the Taotai clan, would not be able to do this. But even so, this kind of strength increase will still threaten my foundation of the divine Tao. I have to settle down in this realm for a period of time and strengthen my foundation of the divine Tao before I can break through to the next realm. Otherwise, my foundation of the divine Tao will be damaged and I will stop at the peak divine king realm in this life. It will be very difficult to pursue the realm of the God Emperor. Ji Tianxing analyzed the pros and cons of rapidly increasing his strength and reminded himself silently. Of course, he was now in the star-devouring grotto heaven, trapped in a devil's den. He would face the threat of death at any time. This kind of strength increase was also forced by circumstances. Tao Yongxing is sanctimonious. On the surface he is hypocritical and pretentious. Secretly he has the intention to kill. He will definitely think of ways to get rid of me. He can deceive others and deceive the Taotai clan, but he can't deceive me. Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation and pondered and analyzed silently. I have been in seclusion for 5 months and 3 days have passed in the outside world. If he has some scheme, he should be done preparing and about to take action, right? Thinking of this, he got up and left the divine tower, returning to the secret chamber. He was about to walk out of the secret chamber to test the reactions of the few elders. Unexpectedly, someone knocked on the door of the secret chamber, and a dull knocking sound came from the door. Dong dong dong. The thick and heavy stone door was knocked with a dull sound, and it was still flickering with a dazzling divine light. He really came. This thought flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind, and the corner of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. He raised his hand and opened the secret chamber's stone door. He saw the white-haired great elder standing at the door of the secret chamber, and the other 4 elders followed behind him. Seeing Ji Tianxing appear, the great elder squeezed out a smile and pretended to laugh heartily. "Young Master Long, I have good news to tell you. The Patriarch has found out the truth and invited you to the Starry Cliff for a banquet. He wants to give you an explanation in person." Chapter 36:18. Starry Cliff? A banquet? Ji Tianxing frowned as he looked at the Grand Elder. He felt that the Grand Elder's smile was extremely fake. However, the current situation was very clear. The Taotai Patriarch and several elders wanted to kill him, but because of the Taotai clan's reputation, they were still acting. If he shed all pretense of cordiality and forcibly broke out of the encirclement and escaped from the star-devouring paradise, the experts of the Taotai clan would immediately take action to kill him. Even the entire Taotai clan, including several thousand Taotai clansmen, would besiege him. Therefore, Ji Tianxing could only endure and cooperate with the Taotai Patriarch's act. He could only look for an opportunity to counterattack and escape in the other party's scheme. The Grand Elder still maintained a gentle smile as he patiently explained, "Young Master Long, please rest assured. The Patriarch has always been fair and impartial. He will definitely not favor those 2 elders. As far as I know, those 2 elders were severely punished by the Patriarch. In order to express his apology and to highlight the seriousness of the matter, the Patriarch set up a banquet at the Starry Cliff and invited you face to face. The Patriarch wants to apologize to you face to face and compensate you." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked, "It's fine if it's in the Patriarch's palace. Why does it have to be at the Starry Cliff?" After refining Tao Wangchuan and Tao Changji's godheads, he naturally obtained the memories of the 2 god kings. Therefore he knew the exact location of the starry cliff. The Grand Elder explained with a smile, "Young Master Long may not know, but the starry cliff is our star-devouring paradise's unique scenic spot. You can overlook the boundless starry sky and enjoy the scene of billions of stars. Normally, the patriarch will only set up a banquet at the starry cliff when he receives distinguished guests." Hearing this, a thought suddenly flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind. This camp is right in the middle of the star-devouring paradise. The starry cliff is north of the camp, at the edge of the star-devouring paradise. The exit of the star-devouring paradise is at the southern edge of the camp, close to 100,000 miles from here. If the patriarch and the grand priest are both at the starry cliff, then wouldn't my chances of escaping be very high? Therefore Ji Tianxing pretended to casually ask, "Are we going to the starry cliff now? The patriarch and the grand priest are already waiting there?" The great elder didn't reply immediately. Instead he furrowed his brows in vigilance. After a moment of silence he smiled and replied, "The patriarch and the high priest are dealing with some clan affairs. We will go to the starry cliff first and the patriarch and the high priest will follow. If young Master Long doesn't want to go first, then we can wait a little longer. When the patriarch and the high priest are done with their affairs, we can go to the star cliff together." It was obvious that Tao Yongxing and the high priest had also left a card up their sleeves to prevent Ji Tianxing from escaping. Ji Tianxing frowned. He was a little disappointed and could only give up the idea of taking the opportunity to escape. Thus he waved his hand and said, "No need to wait. Let's go to Starry Cliff first. It just so happens that this prince has only heard of the wonders of the Starry Cliff before, but has never seen it with his own eyes. Let's go over first. This king can also admire the vast starry sky." "That's good." The first elder nodded with a satisfied smile. After that, the 5 elders took Ji Tianxing and left Wuxia Palace, flying towards the north. On the surface, it looked like the 5 elders were accompanying Ji Tianxing. On the way, the first elder was very enthusiastic and introduced the star-devouring grotto heaven to Ji Tianxing, as well as the beautiful scenery of the starry cliff. But in reality the 4 elders were silent and vigilant at all times, preventing Ji Tianxing from suddenly injuring or escaping. A distance of more than 90,000 miles was not far for the God Kings. After a short 45 minutes, everyone arrived at the northern border of the star-devouring grotto heaven and arrived at the bottom of the starry cliff. There were barren mountains all around, and beneath everyone's feet was a wasteland full of gravel. And right in front of them, near the edge of the transparent spatial barrier, there was a lone peak that was 10,000 feet tall. That lone peak looked as if it had been hacked by an axe. The front was very steep and the back was a straight cliff. The cliff was close to the transparent spatial barrier, and outside was the dark starry sky. And at the top of the lone peak, on the mountain peak with a radius of 100 miles, stood a simple and dignified palace. Tao Yongxing's banquet to entertain Ji Tianxing was in that palace. Sush. The 5 elders brought Ji Tianxing to the top of the starry cliff and landed outside the palace. Ji Tianxing pretended not to notice the approaching danger and looked around curiously, revealing an amazed expression. The legendary starry cliff does not disappoint. Behind this cliff is the spatial barrier of the star-devouring grotto heaven, and beyond it is the vast starry sky. Ordinary people stay in the dragon realm, which is extremely far away from outer space. But here, between us and the vast starry sky, is only a spatial barrier. Ji Tianxing admired the vast starry sky as he exclaimed. But in reality he secretly used the divine eye mystic technique and used his divine sense to explore the entire starry cliff. In a short while he discovered the problem. Just as he had guessed, today's banquet was a trap. The palace in front of him had also set up a supreme-grade king-grade divine array, which was full of hidden dangers. At this moment the divine array was hidden very deeply, and unless one was a top-array grandmaster one would not be able to see it. However, once the divine array was activated, the entire palace and even the entire starry cliff would be sealed. At that time not only would he be unable to escape, he would also have to bear the suppression and attack of the divine array. In addition, Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and many elders would take action and he would die without a doubt. What a vicious scheme, what ruthless methods. In order to deal with me he spent so much effort and methods and even mobilized so many divine kings. Tao Yongxing is really too cautious. Such methods are enough to deal with a 9th-level divine king expert. Ji Tianxing thought to himself, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Since he saw through Tao Yongxing's scheme in advance, he naturally would not sit still and wait for death. He opened the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda and released Ping Fei. Swoosh! Divine light flashed and Ping Fei suddenly appeared in front of the elders. Ji Tianxing patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "Peng Fei, this is the starry cliff of the star-devouring grotto heaven. Enjoy the scenery here." After saying that, he secretly gave Peng Fei a look. Peng Fei immediately understood what he meant and guessed what he was going to do, but he needed cover. Thus, Peng Fei pretended to look around excitedly and cheered excitedly, "Wow! What a dazzling starry sky, we can really overlook the galaxy from here." As he said that, he pulled the high priest with a heart full of excitement and asked a series of questions. "High priest, is the star closest to us the dragon realm? Are we outside the dragon realm? Is the star-devouring grotto heaven floating in the starry sky? Is the spatial barrier strong? Will it be broken by meteors?" Peng Fei acted as if he was very familiar with the place, pulling the elders to ask all sorts of questions, which made the elders very uncomfortable. However, the patriarch and the high priest had not arrived yet, and the elders still had to continue acting. They could only reveal forced smiles and answer Peng Fei's questions one by one. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing secretly observed the divine array that sealed the palace, looking for a way to break it. Chapter 36:19. Peng Fei was still very talented in this aspect of causing trouble. There was a period of time when the 5 elders were confused and disoriented by his continuous barrage of questions. As a result, their attention was diverted by Peng Fei. Ji Tianxing took the opportunity to observe the divine formation sealing the palace and indeed saw the trick. But the good times did not last long. As he began to move and change his position to observe the divine formation, First Elder finally came back to his senses. He sensed that Ji Tianxing's actions were suspicious and guessed that Ji Tianxing was suspicious and was observing and guarding against something. Unfortunately, he was firmly entangled by Peng Fei and could not escape. Therefore, he secretly transmitted his voice to the other elders and said, "Leave this Peng brat to me. You guys keep an eye on Long Tian and don't let him play any tricks." The elders nodded secretly and hurriedly turned to leave, wanting to keep an eye on and pester Ji Tianxing. But Peng Fei's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He held back the 2 elders with one hand. The 2 elders were somewhat angry and glared at him with sharp gazes. But he had a cheeky look as if he did not see the 2 elders' angry gazes and pestered the 2 of them. The 2 elders were angry but could not fall out with Peng Fei and could only impatiently deal with him. Just like that, Peng Fei held back the 3 elders alone. Seeing this, the other 2 elders hurriedly left to harass and pester Ji Tianxing. However, Ji Tianxing's performance gave the 2 elders a headache. He was actually able to multitask. While observing the divine formation, he was also able to deal with the 2 elders. No matter if the 2 elders asked questions, chatted, or deliberately blocked and disturbed Ji Tianxing's mind, Ji Tianxing was not affected at all. He had a smile on his face. While dealing with the 2 elders, he quickly walked around the palace. The 2 elders increasingly felt that something was wrong. Full of anxiety, they could not help but intercept Ji Tianxing and restrict his movements. However, Ji Tianxing's movement technique was very ghostly. His figure often flashed and avoided the 2 elders. Just like that, while both sides restrained their anger and put on an act, they competed with each other with their own thoughts. 100 breaths later, Ji Tianxing still hadn't found a way to break the god array. After all, this was a supreme grade king-level divine formation. Tao Yongxing and the high priest had spent 3 days setting it up. No matter how profound Ji Tianxing's attainments in the array Dao were, it was impossible for him to find a solution in such a short period of time. However, he had seen through the veins and foundations of the divine formation and found its weak point. Therefore, while dealing with the 2 elders, he took out one king-grade divine artifact after another and silently dug into the ground. His movements were extremely fast and stealthy. In addition, he had secretly released an invisible spiritual energy to conceal himself from the 2 elders' divine consciousness. In this way, he could walk around the palace and secretly bury 9 king-grade divine artifacts in less than 15 minutes. Furthermore, his actions had not been discovered by the 2 elders. Those 9 king-grade divine artifacts, sabers, spears, swords, halberds, everything. They were the spoils of war that he obtained from killing various divine king powerhouses in the past. even though those divine artifacts were not high-grade goods. Most of them were some low-grade king-grade divine artifacts. There were only 2 middle-grade king-grade divine artifacts. But Ji Tianxing buried those 9 divine artifacts underground and nailed them to the weak points and key positions of the divine formation. At a critical moment they could play an unexpected role. If there was enough time, Ji Tianxing still wanted to continue observing the divine formation and find a way to break it. But very unfortunately 15 minutes had already passed. In the sky not far away, 2 balls of divine light flew over at lightning speed. Zhoosh, zhoosh. 10 breaths later, those 2 balls of divine light arrived at the peak of the deep star cliff and landed outside the palace gates. The divine light receded, revealing Tao Yongxing, the high priest, Tao Rongxin and Tao Yuxing's figures. And at this time Ji Tianxing and Ping Fei also returned to normal. They stood together with the 5 elders and looked at Tao Yongxing and the rest. "Ha! Young Master Long, how is the scenery of the deep star cliff?" After Tao Yongxing landed, he looked at Ji Tianxing with a smile and asked. On the surface, it looked like he was just being polite with Ji Tianxing and casually chatting with him. But everyone was well aware that when they heard Tao Yongxing's words, they all felt that it was somewhat ironic. Especially Tao Rongxin and Tao Yuxing, who looked at Ji Tianxing with a cold expression. Their eyes contained a trace of a strange light. It was as if they were filled with anticipation and wanted to see Ji Tianxing's body torn into pieces. That kind of excitement and cruelty. Ji Tianxing replied with a smile. The scenery is picturesque and majestic. This deep star cliff and star-devouring grotto heaven are rare treasures in the dragon realm. But unfortunately, hearing these 3 words, Tao Yongxing and the elders all frowned. The high priestess even stared at Ji Tianxing and asked, "But unfortunately what?" "Ha ha." Ji Tianxing revealed a meaningful smile and said with a sigh, "Unfortunately, such a beautiful scenery can only be appreciated in the future." Hearing this answer, the Taotai clan powerhouses' faces all froze, their expressions not too natural. Especially the elders, who secretly sneered in their hearts. "Oh, you damn bastard idiot. Death is at hand and you still don't know it. Do you think you still have a future?" But Tao Yongxing, the high priestess, and the great elder heard another meaning. "Appreciate in the future? Looks like this kid has already noticed and knows that we are going to make a move." Not only did he notice that we are going to make a move, but he also has the confidence to successfully escape. Moreover, he will return to the star-devouring grotto heaven in the future and take revenge on us? What an arrogant kid. No matter what, we must kill him today and eliminate him completely. The Taotai clan powerhouses suppressed their anger and killing intent and tried their best to remain calm. Tao Yongxing originally still wanted to continue teasing Ji Tianxing with the attitude of a cat toying with a mouse before making a move, treating it as entertainment. The high priestess, great elder, and the rest also very much wanted to see Ji Tianxing's stunned, disbelieving and also panicked and fearful expression when he was besieged. But Ji Tianxing already sensed their motives and killing intent. Everyone immediately felt dull and also did not have the joy of teasing Ji Tianxing. Tao Yongxing did not wish to delay anymore, so he ordered expressionlessly, "All right, everyone is already here. The banquet is also prepared. Let's go in then." Finished talking, he and the high priestess sandwiched Ji Tianxing on the left and right, taking the lead and stepping into the palace. Peng Fei was also taken care of by the 2 elders, half pulling, half dragging into the palace. Boom. When everyone entered the divine palace, the instant the palace doors closed, a mocking sneer flashed across the depths of Tao Yongxing, the high priestess and the 7 elders' eyes. Ji Tianxing and Peng Fei, this step into the palace was equivalent to stepping into hell. Following this, a good show was about to start. Tao Rongxin and Tao Yuxing already could not suppress the excitement in their hearts, revealing a victorious sneer. Even if their expressions were strange and would expose themselves in advance, no one cared or reminded them. Because in the view of the 9 Taotai clan divine kings, the matter was already a foregone conclusion. There were no exceptions. Chapter 36:20. Logically speaking, Tao Yongxing set up a banquet to entertain Ji Tianxing. Not only were there guards in the palace, there should also be maidservants. But there was not a single guard inside or outside the palace, let alone a single maidservant. What was even more outrageous was that when everyone stepped into the hall of the palace, only then did Ji Tianxing discover that the hall was empty. There was neither a dining table nor delicacies. There was only the icy-cold crystal blue floor and 8 pitch-black rock pillars. Of course, in the corners of the hall, there were several rock statues that were also icy-cold. Since we're going to act, then act to the end. Ji Tianxing stood at the entrance of the hall and surveyed the hall. He could not help sneering and said, I didn't expect that clan head Tao is so impatient, not even acting at the last step, the most crucial act? Tao Yongxing and the few elders all frowned. A cold light and killing intent flashed across their eyes. Especially Tao Yongxing, who looked at Ji Tianxing with a cold smile and asked in a mocking tone, Young Master Long, what are you saying? Why can't this seat understand? The high priest and the few elders were silent. They all spread out quietly and blocked the entrance of the hall to prevent Ji Tianxing and Peng Fei from escaping. Peng Fei realized that things were not good and immediately frowned, looking at the few elders with a heart full of vigilance. Ji Tianxing was still calm and composed. Turning his head to look at Tao Yongxing, he said with a cold smile, Clan head Tao, it's already reached this point. Is there still a need to play dumb? This prince has already come here and stepped into the trap you laid. Don't delay anymore. Hurry up and make your move. End this quickly. Ji Tianxing already said it so clearly. Tao Yongxing and the few elders of the Taotai clan could no longer act. They all tore off their disguises and revealed their true faces. Originally, I still wanted to give you a surprise. Didn't expect that you discovered it long ago. Sai, this is seriously too boring. Tao Yongxing put away the cold smile on his face, shook his head and sighed. The high priest and the few elders were also surprised by Ji Tianxing's reaction. Originally thought that we could deceive everyone. Didn't think that we all underestimated you. Brat, so what even if you saw through our scheme? You've already fallen into a tight encirclement and you're dead for sure. Hee. The noble bloodline of the dragon tribe will soon belong to us. No matter what means or background you have, it's useless. Even if the dragon emperor comes today, he won't be able to save you. As they spoke, the elders took out their divine weapons and swords. They sneered and exuded a terrifying killing intent. Tao Yongxing also waved his hands and shot out a dozen or so rays of divine light, which entered the walls of the palace. In the next moment, divine light soared into the sky around the palace, and a dark red light barrier with a radius of 10,000 feet appeared in an instant. The Supreme Grade King Sealing Divine Matrix was activated. It sealed the entire palace and released an invisible, majestic divine power to suppress Ji Tianxing and Peng Fei. Among the crowd, the two people who were the most excited were Tao Rongxin and Tao Yuxing. Both of them were holding onto their divine weapons. Their faces were filled with cruel and sinister smiles as they laughed out loud. Ha! Long Tian, you've fallen into our trap. Do you think the patriarch will uphold justice for you and punish us? You're too naive. If not for taking the big picture into consideration, the patriarch would have already killed you 3 days ago. Even if your status is noble and your strength is uncommon, so what? Landing in our Taotai clan's hands, you can forget about leaving alive. For close to 10,000 years, God knows how many dragon race divine kings like you were all killed by us like this. Until they died, they couldn't rest in peace. 3 days ago, Tao Yongxing reprimanded the two of them in public and even threatened to punish them severely. This made the two of them feel very wronged and also lost face in front of the Taotai clan. In these 3 days, the two of them had been suppressing their fury all along, patiently waiting for the moment of revenge. Now they finally did not need to pretend anymore and could personally kill their enemy. They were more excited than anyone else. Ji Tianxing's eyes swept across Tao Rongxin and Tao Yuxing icily. Finally, his gaze landed on Tao Yongxing. The corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile and he said in a contemptuous tone, actually as early as in the Forget River Palace, when they joined hands to deal with this king already saw through the Taotai clan's true colors. As the saying goes, a dog can't change its habit of eating shit. The Taotai clan was originally a despicable race that was greedy, cunning, bloodthirsty, tyrannical, and despicable. How could they possibly turn over a new leaf? Therefore, the words that Tao Yongxing said 3 days ago, this king didn't believe a single word. From then on, this king predicted that you all would definitely use an even more meticulous plan and gather the most powerful forces to kill this king in one blow. Clap, clap, clap. Tao Yongxing could not resist applauding for Ji Tianxing and said with a cold smile, what a fine long expected. In the recent several thousand years, The dragon race divine kings that this seat killed were also 80 if not 100. But the majority of the dragon race divine kings were deceived by this seat. Only all the way until this seat raised the butcher's knife did they beg for mercy in astonishment. Only an extremely small number of dragon race divine kings were able to see through this seat's intentions. But they were not calm enough and all fled and resisted in a panic. They would expose their backgrounds and backers, hoping that this seat could let them off. Or take out all kinds of treasures and belongings, hoping that this seat would spare their lives. Speaking up to hear, Tao Yongxing paused for a moment. He stared at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze and said in a low voice, "Only you are the most special. Not only did you see through this seat's intentions, you could even maintain your calm and composure. Even knowing that death was at hand, you could still be so calm and confident. Those who don't know would think that you set up an ambush for us and wanted to catch us all in one fell swoop. This seat really wants to know, where did your courage and confidence come from?" Even though Tao Yongxing's tone was low and serious, the high priest and several elders still could not help but want to laugh. After all, this was too ironic and too comical. Ji Tianqing put away his cold smile and ridicule, and looked at Tao Yongxing expressionlessly. A cold light flashed in his right hand, and he took out the sword of burial of heaven. By the sword in this king's hand. His tone was dignified and cold as he shouted coldly and instantly swung his sword at Tao Yongxing. No one was on guard against Ji Tianqing, who was trapped in a tight encirclement and was undoubtedly going to die, but he was actually so decisive and ruthless. He did not wait for Tao Yongxing and the others to make a move, and he actually dared to assassinate Tao Yongxing first. How confident, how courageous was he? However, as the Taotai clan leader and a 9th-level divine king realm expert, Tao Yongxing was extremely scheming and shrewd. He was already prepared for Ji Tianqing's sudden attack, so he was not surprised at all. When the dazzling sword light shone and went straight to his face, he did not hesitate to teleport 1,000 feet away and appeared at the other end of the hall. Swoosh! The dazzling sword light almost brushed past Tao Yongxing's shoulder, but it did not hurt him at all and he dodged it perfectly. However, Tao Yongxing was strong enough and he was prepared for it so he could dodge the sword. The few elders standing behind him could not dodge it in time. Chapter 36:21. Boom! In a spark of flint, the resplendent sword light chopped onto an elder, giving off a muffled thud. A head flew into the sky. Scorching hot divine blood spewed out of the neck, splattering on the other few elders' bodies. Such a horrifying scene made the high priest and the 6 elders somewhat dumbfounded. Even though they knew that Ji Tianqing's strength was not ordinary, comparable to high-ranking divine kings. But they never would have thought that Ji Tianqing's strength was actually daunting to such an extent. The situation was not right. Wasn't he severely injured? Why did he not look like he was injured at all? It seemed like his strength was even stronger than before. These thoughts flashed across Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and the 4 elders' minds at the same time. Thud. Only when the head and headless corpse fell to the ground did the high priest and the few elders come back to their senses. Only then did everyone see clearly that the unlucky fellow decapitated by Ji Tianqing with one sword was precisely 3rd elder Tao Rongxin. The exalted 7th-level divine king realm Tao Rongxin actually could not dodge that sword and was instantly beheaded. Even though he only had his divine body destroyed and did not lose his life on the spot, his divine spark still existed. But he already lost his combat strength. The divine spark could only fly out of his head, rushing towards the hall's entrance in a panic. Very clearly Tao Rongxin was scared silly too. He forgot that the door was already closed. Furthermore, the entire palace was sealed by a divine array. Swoosh! The fist-sized blood-red divine spark flew to the hall's entrance, but could only turn back. At this time, Ji Tianqing brandished the burial of heaven sword again, slashing towards Tao Rongxin's divine spark. He wanted to seize the opportunity to pursue and kill Tao Rongxin on the spot, finishing off a formidable foe. Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and the few elders finally calmed down the astonishment in their hearts and hurriedly made a move to intercept. Kill him. Don't be in a daze, attack together. It's hard to dispel the hatred in our hearts if we don't tear him to shreds. Also, his followers and guards must be ground to dust too. Amidst everyone's shouting, they assigned the tasks. 2 elders joined forces to besiege Peng Fei. Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and the 4 elders joined forces to besiege Ji Tianqing. Everyone took out their divine weapons and unleashed their mighty divine power, unleashing their powerful divine skills. Swish, swish. Instantly, the blood-light, scarlet fire and sword shadows that blotted out the sky and covered the earth filled the entire hall, drowning out the figures of Ji Tianqing and Peng Fei. Peng Fei was besieged by two high divine king elders. He couldn't see any hope of survival. His heart was filled with grief and despair. Even if he used all his strength to block, it would be impossible for him to block this attack. He would be killed instantly. However, at this critical moment he suddenly saw two figures appear beside him. Swoosh, swish. One of them was a middle-aged man from the god race in a green robe, and the other was a stone giant that was 30 meters tall. These two middle-level divine kings had appeared in the great battle of the River of Forgetfulness Palace previously. Peng Fei had seen them before and knew that they were Ji Tianqing's guards. He immediately felt more at ease. The green-robed man was Chao Qingyu and the stone giant was Yank. After the two of them appeared, they didn't say a word. Instead, they used all their defensive divine skills to block the attacks of the two elders. Bam, 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 bam. The next moment, countless sword shadows collided with the shield and the light wall, creating a deafening explosion. In an instant, the entire hall was filled with raging shockwaves and billions of shards of divine light. Rumble. The palace made of special rocks couldn't withstand the destructive impact and more than half of it collapsed on the spot. The hall that everyone was in turned into rubble. There were broken bricks under their feet and there were dilapidated walls all around. Chao Qingyu and Yank barely managed to fend off the attacks of the two elders and protect Peng Fei. However, the three of them were blasted thousands of meters away and smashed into the rubble. Chao Qingyu and Yank were fine. They didn't suffer any substantial injuries. However, Peng Fei was severely injured by the violent divine power. His internal organs were all shattered and blood kept flowing out of his nose and mouth. On the other side, another figure appeared beside Ji Tianqing. It was a white-haired man from the Phoenix clan with a cold face. It was Bai Feng. Although the two of them joined forces and used all their divine skills to block and neutralize the attacks of the 6 Taotai god kings. However, Tao Yongxing and the high priest were both 9th-stage god kings, and the two strongest god kings in the Taotai clan. The Grand Elder, the Second Elder and Tao Yuxing were all high god kings of the 8th and 7th level. Only the 7th Elder was slightly weaker. He was a 6th-stage god king. The 6 of them joined forces and no one could stop them. Ji Tianqing and Bai Feng were also blasted away and smashed into the rubble thousands of meters away. A few walls were smashed into pieces. When the two of them flew out of the rubble, they were covered in broken bricks and stained with blood. They were in a sorry state. The situation in the field was very clear. Ji Tianqing's side had few people and weak strength. They were not the Taotai clan's powerhouses match at all. Luckily, Ji Tianqing destroyed Tao Rongxin's divine body with one sword, making him lose his combat strength. If not for so, they would be besieged by 7 god kings, and their outcome would be even more miserable. Seeing Peng Fei heavily injured and on the verge of collapse, Ji Tianqing hurriedly opened up the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda and put him away. A battle between god-king powerhouses, a high-ranking god-lord like Peng Fei did not have the qualifications to take part at all. This was also the reason why Tao Yongxing did not arrange for guards inside and outside the palace. Because those divine lord realm guards, no matter how many there were, they could only be cannon fodder. Ha! Long Tian, this seat knew long ago that you brought along several god-king realm guards with you. But this is all futile. You guys better admit defeat obediently and surrender. Tao Yongxing did not take out a divine weapon. Hands behind his back, he looked at Ji Tianqing with a proud expression, laughing loudly with confidence. The high priest and the few elders also spread out one after another, surrounding Ji Tianqing, Bai Feng, Chao Qingyu and Yank, the 4 people. Everyone all revealed a smug cold smile, their eyes mocking and cruel. The atmosphere in the field was very stifling. Yank and Chao Qingyu were still considered calm, trusting Ji Tianqing a lot. But Bai Feng was filled with anxiety and worry. She could not resist looking at Ji Tianqing and transmitting her voice, asking, "Your Excellency, what should we do? You definitely have a way to charge out of the heavy encirclement, right?" Ji Tianqing looked straight ahead, his tone calm as he replied, "Of course." As he said, he raised his head and looked at the sky. More than half of the palace collapsed. His gaze was not obstructed, passing through the translucent spatial barrier, looking at the vast and boundless starry sky. The corners of his mouth suddenly revealed a hint of a playful smile. The vast and boundless starry sky is within reach. At such a close distance, the power of that sword technique will definitely increase explosively by several times, right? He muttered to himself, slowly raising the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand, pointing at the boundless starry sky. Then he shouted in a low voice, "Sword rain!" As he shouted coldly, a formless and mysterious vast power erupted from the sword of burial of heaven and his body. Suddenly, the billions of stars in the vast starry sky were attracted by the mysterious power. Chapter 36:22. Ji Tianxing's behavior was a little strange to Tao Yongsheng and the others. They could not understand why this guy did not surrender or fight back. What was he trying to do? What was the use of pointing his sword at the starry sky and shouting for no reason? Just as Tao Yongsheng, the high priest, and the others were full of doubts, Tao Yuxing's expression suddenly changed. He pointed at the starry sky and exclaimed, "Oh my God!" The sudden exclamation gave everyone a fright. Tao Yongsheng, the high priest, and the elders all looked up at the starry sky. Then they saw a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. In the gloomy starry sky, tens of thousands of resplendent spots of light lit up. In just a breath's time, more than 30,000 silver light spots descended on the starry cliff like a meteor shower. Then, everyone saw clearly that it was neither light spots nor a meteor shower. It was a total of more than 36,000 starry swords formed by endless starry divine power. Each of the starry swords was more than 3,000 meters long. They looked real, sacred, and majestic. When the 36,000 starry swords passed through the space barrier and entered the starry swallowing grotto heaven, they absorbed half of the starry swallowing grotto heaven's starry divine power and expanded in size. Before the starry swords descended, their terrifying divine power had already shrouded a radius of tens of thousands of miles. The entire starry cliff was shaking. Tao Yongsheng, the high priest, and the elders were so suppressed by the terrifying sword power that their faces turned pale. They could not imagine that other than the dragon emperors, there was someone in the world who could use such a terrifying sword Dao divine power. That supreme sword might that was like the rules of the heavenly Dao was enough to destroy everyone's fighting spirit and confidence. At this moment not only the high priest and the elders were shocked, but fear flashed in their eyes. Even Tao Yongsheng's expression and eyes became extremely solemn. No. This is no longer a sword Dao divine power but a sword Dao divine rule true meaning. This thought flashed through Tao Yongsheng's mind, and his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He suddenly realized that there might be a change in today's hunting plan. Therefore he used his secret technique as fast as he could to operate the Supreme Grade King Grade Divine Array at full power. The divine light shield enveloping the palace instantly expanded to a radius of 100 miles, covering the entire starry cliff. Moreover, the protective barrier flickered with dark red divine light, greatly increasing its defensive power. Rumble! In the next moment, more than 36,000 huge starry swords flooded the starry cliff like a torrential flood. All of the starry swords exploded with the most violent power, fiercely slamming into the blood-red divine light shield. Deafening explosions continued to erupt, reverberating endlessly between the heavens and the earth, spreading tens of thousands of miles away. At this moment, other than Tao Yongsheng, the high priest and the other elders all had their hearts in their throats. They were afraid that the divine light barrier would be destroyed, and they would be killed by the divine swords that filled the sky. Fortunately, the blood-red light shield trembled violently and fluctuated crazily. However, only a few cracks appeared on it and it was not destroyed. The first wave of sword rain was blocked by the blood-red light shield. The high priest and several elders heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Tao Yongsheng raised his eyebrows and regained his confident smile. He looked at Ji Tianxing and said, "Ha! Boy, your attainments in sword Dao are indeed amazing. But unfortunately your sword technique is flashy without substance. It can't do anything to the divine array that I have set up. After all, it is a supreme grade king grade divine array that I and many other experts have spent a lot of effort to set up. Originally, a 9th degree realm divine king like Tao Yongsheng could not possibly set up a supreme grade king grade divine array. Only peak divine kings and dragon emperor level experts could do it. But this supreme grade king grade divine array was passed down from generation to generation in the Taotai clan. It was also a simpler and easier setup supreme-grade king-grade divine array. Ji Tianxing looked at Tao Yongxing expressionlessly, raised his eyebrows and said, "My sword technique is flashy without substance? Your divine array is indeed a supreme-grade king-grade divine array. But unfortunately, it can only be considered as a bottom-grade array among the supreme-grade king-grade divine arrays. Now I will let you see clearly how weak it is." When his voice fell, his left hand formed a divine art and used a secret technique to secretly control the 9 supreme-grade king-grade divine artifacts that were buried underground. At the same time, he waved the Sword of Burial of Heaven in his right hand and controlled the 36,000 starry giant swords to attack again. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. More than 36,000 starry giant swords danced and shuttled back and forth at an extremely fast speed. They exploded with violent power and bombarded the blood light shield. Boom. Boom boom boom. The blood light shield that was 100 miles in radius suddenly trembled violently and the divine light shield flashed chaotically. Immediately after, everyone heard 9 consecutive loud rumbling sounds coming from the ground beneath their feet. Suddenly the ground around the palace ruins cracked and collapsed and 9 deep pits appeared. There was a destructive divine power shock wave that bloomed with colorful divine light and rushed into the sky with endless dust. The entire starry cliff shook violently and a huge crack appeared. It was on the verge of collapse. But what shocked Tao Yongxing and the elders even more was that the blood light shield was suddenly damaged and its power was rapidly weakening. The light also became dim and bright. Bang bang bang, boom, put. As the starry swords continued to attack, cracks began to appear on the blood-red light shield, and gaps began to appear one after another. Those cracks and gaps quickly spread out in all directions. Soon the entire divine formation was riddled with holes and shattered. The high priest and the elders were ashen-faced. They hurriedly released their divine power to help repair the gaps and cracks in the divine array. But it was all in vain. The divine array was collapsing at an extremely fast speed. Tao Yongxing's expression was also gloomy. He hurriedly used his divine sense to check the situation of the divine array. Only then did he realize that the foundation of the divine array had been destroyed and a few key meridians had been cut off. No wonder the divine array suddenly weakened and was shattered by the starry giant swords. That damned Long Tian, he actually knew the structure of this divine array and tampered with it beforehand? Tao Yongxing immediately guessed the answer. Then his heart was in turmoil. He was so shocked that he was dumbfounded. Oh my God. He only came 45 minutes early and under the supervision of the elders, he could actually see through the structure of this divine array? Then isn't his array Dao as powerful as his sword Dao? Has it reached an unimaginable level? Thinking of this, Tao Yongxing felt his heart palpitate and his mouth go dry. If Tao Changji and Tao Wangchuan were still alive, he would definitely strangle those 2 fellows by their necks and ask them how they had provoked such a terrifying monster. That's right. In Tao Yongxing's opinion, Ji Tianxing was a terrifying monster. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 36-23. Accompanied by cracking sounds, the divine formation that enveloped the peak of the starry cliff crumbled and shattered. Hundreds of millions of fragments of divine light poured down like a storm and spread out in all directions like raging waves. Swoosh. The entire peak of starry cliff was swept away. The dilapidated palace was flattened on the spot and not many bricks were left. Tao Yongxing's trump card was gone and trapping Ji Tianxing and the rest became an extravagant hope. However, this was secondary. The main problem that he and the divine kings of Taotai tribe had to face was the attack of the 36,000 starry swords. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Under the control of Ji Tianxing's mind, the 36,000 starry swords formed a sky punishment sword formation that was 10,000 miles wide. Tens of thousands of starry swords formed a light wall and sealed off the area. The other 26,000 starry swords exploded with their fastest speed and most terrifying power as they charged towards Tao Yongxing and the rest. Boom. Boom boom boom. Suddenly the starry swords rained down and drowned the entire starry cliff. There was a deafening explosion. Starry Cliff already had a few ravines and it was on the verge of collapse. After being attacked by tens of thousands of starry swords, the cliff cracked and collapsed in all directions. Rocks and soil flew everywhere. Tao Yongxing and the rest who were attacked by the tens of thousands of starry swords ended up in a miserable state. Tao Yongxing and the Grand Priest were still fine. After all, they were 9th-level Divine King Realm experts and they could withstand the power of the starry swords. However, the few elders were in trouble. They were covered in wounds and blood splattered everywhere. The most miserable one was the 3rd elder Zhou Xian. At the beginning of the battle, his body was destroyed by Xianxia and he was only left with a godhead. When everyone was fighting, his godhead could only hide at the edge to avoid being affected. However, he did not have a chance to escape and he was sealed off by the Sky Punishment Sword formation. Then his godhead was attacked by hundreds of starry swords and it shattered into pieces. More than a dozen shards of divinity were scattered all over the ruins. With a wave of his hand, Xianxia collected the godhead fragment and stored it in his spatial ring. The Great Elder and 2nd Elder were both injured by the giant swords that filled the sky. Their robes were dyed with blood and they looked extremely miserable. The 4th Elder Tao Yuxing, the 5th Elder and the 6th Elder were all heavily injured by the giant sword. Their bodies were covered with wounds and dripping with blood. As for the weakest 7th Elder, he was only a 6th-stage realm god king. How could he withstand the bombardment of 10,000 swords? He was smashed into pieces by the tens of thousands of swords, and his divine body was reduced to pieces all over the ground. Only one godhead was left, and it fled in panic, flying toward the edge of the sword formation. Xianxia signaled to Bai Feng, Chao Qingyu and Yank with his eyes. The 3 of them immediately understood his intentions and hurriedly chased after the 7th Elder's godhead. Their mission was very simple, and it was to annihilate the 7th Elder and obtain his godhead fragments. Xianxia, on the other hand, was fighting against Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and the 5 elders by himself with the heaven-destroying sword formation. Even though he was outnumbered, he had a card up his sleeve and was full of confidence. Yank and Chao Qingyu were not surprised and only felt that this was a matter of course. Because they had followed Xianxia for a very long time and had witnessed too many miracles. Bai Feng's feelings were a little complicated. He was both shocked and in awe. It was until now that he understood that right from the start, Xianxia's plan was not only to escape from the encirclement, but also to complete the counterattack and severely injure the Taotai clan's strong practitioners. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he also did not dare to believe that Xianxia actually had such terrifying means to be able to realize his plan. This was simply too dreamy. Little bastard, you're too much. Do you really think that this seat can't deal with you? Tao Yongxing regained his senses and stared at Xianxia with eyes that were about to split open. His entire body was bursting with murderous intent. Half an hour ago, when they entered the palace, they were originally harboring the belief that they would win, with the mentality of a cat playing with a mouse. But now the situation had been reversed. Xianxia and the rest were safe and sound, but they had fallen into a passive state, suffering heavy casualties. This was simply too ironic. Tao Yongxing felt that he had to take out his trump card and ultimate skills in order to win back some ground. He took out a huge pitch-black God's Clock and injected divine power into it, activating the God's Clock. Suddenly, the pitch-black God's Clock, which was the size of a fist, expanded to a height of 10,000 feet, as big as a mountain. Under his control, the God's Clock floated above the ruins of the starry cliff, releasing a dazzling crimson light to resist the heaven-destroying sword formation. Swoosh, swoosh. Meanwhile, he, the Grand Priest, and a few elders flew below the God's Clock and hid within the crimson light shield. With the protection of the pitch-black God's Clock, the starry giant swords that were flying and shuttling in the sky were all blocked by the crimson light. No matter how the starry giant swords attacked, Tao Yongxing and the elders were safe and sound. Young man, although your dragon clan rules this world and is supreme, our Taotai clan is not to be trifled with either. This is the treasure of our clan, the primordial chaos spell. Tao Yongxing stood under the crimson light and glared at Xianxia fiercely as he spoke arrogantly. The primordial chaos spell? Xianxia raised his eyebrows and a dark look flashed across his eyes. He had heard of the God's Clock's great reputation 1,000 years ago. Before the Antiquity Age, when heaven and earth had just been created, the dragon realm was barren and there were not tens of thousands of demon clans. At that time, the dragon, phoenix, and qilin were the leaders, the 4 sacred beasts were the assistants, and the 7 ancestors of the demon clan were the backbone of the power. They worked together to create heaven and earth and divided the 4 seas and 5 continents. As the earliest demon clans to appear in the dragon realm, all the clans had obtained Khanate treasures from the chaos. For example, the primordial chaos spell of the Taotai clan was one of the Khanate treasures. It was a Supreme King-level divine weapon that was tainted with a trace of the power of the heavenly way. It was sacred and majestic, and it was immensely powerful. Of course, compared to the Khanate treasures of the Dragon, Wind, and Qilin clans, its grade and power were slightly weaker. However, to the other demon clans and divine kings, the primordial chaos bell was already a powerful and invincible treasure. Ji Tianqing stared at the pitch-black god's clock and muttered to himself, "If it is really the primordial chaos bell, then they are in an invincible position. Killing them is harder than ascending to the heavens." As expected, he used his mind to control more than 26,000 great starry swords and launched a violent attack on Tao Yongxing and the others. Unfortunately, all the great starry swords were blocked by the primordial chaos bell. No matter how powerful the great starry swords were, they could not shake that thin layer of red light. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing was basically sure that the god's clock was the primordial chaos bell, a Supreme King-level divine weapon. He knew that his counterattack plan was about to fail, so he wanted to retreat. With the heaven-destroying sword formation holding back Tao Yongxing and the others, he wanted to bring Bai Feng, Yang, and Chao Qingyu and quickly leave the star-devouring grotto heaven. Anyway, the seventh elder's godhead had already been destroyed by Bai Feng and the other two. When Bai Feng returned to his side, she brought back more than 10 godhead fragments. Therefore, Ji Tianqing took the godhead fragments and decisively chose to retreat. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 36-24. Let's go. Ji Tianqing bellowed as he led Bai Feng, Yang, and Chao Qingyu out of the sword formation. The Taotai tribe had tried to kill him and steal his bloodline. He had wanted to teach the Taotai tribe an unforgettable lesson by killing at least 6 or 7 upper god kings. However, looking at the current situation, this plan was destined to fail. However, he had not lost anything. Instead, he had killed Tao Rongxin and the 7th elder and injured a few other elders. No matter how he looked at it, he had profited. He had no regrets leaving the star-swallowing cave. However, Tao Yongxing and the Taotai tribe's god kings were filled with anger and killing intent. They were unwilling to let him go. Swallow the heavens and earth. Seeing that Ji Tianqing and the rest were about to leave, Tao Yongxing panicked and bellowed angrily. Then he, the Grand Priest, and a few other elders worked together to cast a spell. They poured their divine power into the primordial chaos bell. In an instant, the primordial chaos bell lit up with crimson light and covered the sky. With the primordial chaos bell as the center, the area within 1,000 miles turned into a crimson whirlpool. The whirlpool spun rapidly and released a power that could swallow everything. It swallowed all the starry swords that were flying in the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of starry swords were swallowed by the crimson whirlpool. They were dissolved and scattered. The primordial chaos bell was like a bottomless abyss that could swallow everything. No matter how fierce the starry swords were, they were all turned into its food. In just 2 breaths, 2,000 starry swords were swallowed and dissolved by the primordial chaos bell. Ji Tianqing led Bai Feng and the rest out of the heaven-destroying sword formation and stood in the dark sky. Seeing this scene, he also frowned and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Damn it! As expected of the Taotai tribe's divine item. Can swallow everything. Looks like my heaven-destroying sword formation cannot trap them and will not be able to delay them for long. In the past, Ji Tianqing didn't know much about the Taotai clan. Now he realized that the Taotai clan's power was far stronger than he had imagined. It couldn't be helped. 1,000 years ago, when he was in the Dragon Realm, it was during his rapid growth period. At that time he went from the heavenly deity realm to the divine lord realm, and then to the divine king realm. When he reached the 4th level of the divine king realm, he left the dragon realm for the god realm. Therefore, the dragon realm only knew that the peerless genius Long Tian was like a flash in the pan, and had once bloomed in the dragon realm. Only the experts and forces of the celestial world knew of Kenshin's prowess. In comparison, Ji Tianqing had a clearer understanding of the divine world's power structure and the various paradise. Young master, should we continue to deal with them? Chao Qingyu gripped the green jade divine sword tightly as he glared at Tao Yongxing and the others. No need, we should go. Ji Tianqing shook his head and decisively led Bai Feng and the others towards the south. Swoosh. The 4 of them were extremely fast. They cut across the dark sky like lightning and headed straight for the Taotai clan's camp. After flying for more than 20,000 miles, Ji Tianqing suddenly stopped and turned towards the southwest. Swoosh. He teleported 8,000 miles and appeared in a canyon filled with starlight. Bai Feng, Chao Qingyu and Yank didn't know what was going on. They hurriedly followed him and looked at him with confusion. Before they could ask, Ji Tianxing waved his hand and shot out a ray of golden light into the deep canyon. He plucked 2 basin-sized silver flowers. The 2 lotus-like flowers with 9 petals looked as hard as steel and as cold as stone. They shone with dazzling starlight. This was the star-devouring flower, an upper king-grade treasure unique to the star-devouring paradise. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing was extremely fast. He only took a glance to confirm that the 2 star-devouring flowers were fine. He kept them in his interspatial ring. Then he swung the burial of heaven and slashed 8 times. Swoosh! 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 Bam! 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 With a series of muffled sounds, the 8 dazzling giant swords slashed into the mountains on both sides of the canyon. In an instant, the 2 majestic mountain ranges were sliced into 2 huge chunks. Each mountain was 100 miles wide and contained extremely rich star ores and all kinds of gems. If they were refined, they would be able to extract billions of star ores and all kinds of gems from the 2 mountains. Unfortunately, Ji Tianxing didn't have the time to refine them. Therefore he used the simplest and crudest method. He cut off the 2 mountains from the 2 mountains and kept them in his interspatial ring. He would slowly refine them in the future. Swoosh! Swoosh! Ji Tianxing quickly kept the 2 mountains and continued to fly south with Bai Feng and the other 2. Along the way, Bai Feng couldn't hold back her curiosity and asked, "Master, how do you know that there are treasures and rich mineral resources here?" Ji Tianxing replied calmly, "On the way to the starry cliff, I already used my divine sense to investigate. If we don't take anything with us when we come to the starry swallowing grotto heaven, wouldn't it be a big loss?" That makes sense. Bai Feng was stunned for a moment and quickly nodded in agreement. Chao Qingyu and Yank smiled but didn't say anything. They thought to themselves, this white-feathered phoenix still doesn't know young master's character and is asking such meaningless questions. Next, Ji Tianxing and the others flew south. Along the way he stopped 3 times. Every time he stopped, he would pluck 1 or 2 star-devouring flowers and plunder 1 or 2 star ores. The starry swallowing grotto heaven didn't lack star ores and gems. In this way, Ji Tianxing continued to plunder resources worth 4 to 500 billion star ores. However, he also wasted a few dozen breaths of time. On the ruins of the starry cliff, Tao Yongxing and a few elders were casting spells to control the primordial chaos spell and madly devouring the star ores. After 70 breaths of time, more than 36,000 star ores were all devoured by the primordial chaos spell. The heaven punishment sword formation disappeared and Tao Yongxing and the others' crisis was resolved. Therefore Tao Yongxing kept the primordial chaos spell and led the high priest and a few elders to the south in a rage. "Damn beast, don't let me catch him. I'm going to smash him into pieces and grind his bones to dust. You've been hunting geese all day and you let the geese peck your eyes. This is intolerable. They've escaped to our campsite. Don't let them wreak havoc in our campsite and kill our people." Tao Yongxing, the high priest and the others rushed to the campsite as fast as they could and cursed angrily and worriedly. Originally, they were worried that the heaven punishment sword formation would delay them for too long and they wouldn't be able to catch up with Ji Tianxing and the others. However, when they chased near the campsite of the Taotai tribe, they found traces of Ji Tianxing and the others. At this time, Ji Tianxing and the others were near the campsite. They swung their swords and cut off a mountain range. They dug away a mountain without any scruples. Tao Yongxing and the high priest had sharp eyes. They could tell at a glance that it wasn't an ordinary mountain but a mine that contained star ores. Seeing this, Tao Yongxing was instantly enraged. Chapter 36-25. Despicable thief. While he was running away, he still wanted to plunder our tribe's resources. Tao Yongxing roared furiously. His entire body was burning with rage. The grand priest's face darkened. He gritted his teeth and cursed, "This audacious bastard, he really doesn't know what's good for him. It has always been our tribe plundering the other tribes. I didn't expect him to. This is too despicable." The few elders were also furious. They waved their divine weapons and charged over with murderous intent. However, when both parties were still 5,000 miles away, Ji Tianxing and the rest noticed them. Ji Tianxing hurriedly kept a mine into his space ring. He brought Bai Feng and the rest and flew into the Taotai tribe's camp at lightning speed. Seeing this, Tao Yongxing and the grand priest's eyelids twitched. They had a bad feeling in their hearts. In the next moment their premonition came true. Originally, the Taotai tribe's camp was very peaceful. On the barren land with a radius of 10,000 miles, there were a few hundred palaces and mansions scattered around. Thousands of people from the Taotai tribe stayed in the various palaces and mansions. They were cultivating in seclusion as usual. However, Xianxia and the rest performed their divine skill with all their might. They released an earth-shattering divine skill light shadow that poured down on the camp. Boom, 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 boom. Suddenly, the peaceful Taotai tribe's camp exploded with 5-colored divine light that shot up to the sky. There was a deafening loud noise. At least a few dozen palaces were blasted into ruins by the divine skill light shadow. Hundreds of millions of bricks and stone fragments splattered everywhere. At the same time, a few hundred people from the Taotai tribe died tragically under the bombardment of the divine skill light shadow. The earth-shattering explosion, countless people from the Taotai tribe roared in pain, and the tragic cries of those on the verge of death woke up the surrounding Taotai tribe. Suddenly, the entire camp was in an uproar and fell into chaos. Countless people from the Taotai tribe were filled with fear and confusion. They hurriedly rushed out of the palaces and mansions and flew into the sky to check the situation. It was a pity that before they could figure out what was going on, they were drowned by the divine skill light shadow. Dragon Elephant Divine Fist. Breaking Sun Sword. Great Rotating Sacred Sword. Xianxia was the most valiant. He brandished his left fist and his right hand brandished his sword. In a breath's time he displayed 3 ultimate skills. Bai Feng, Chao Qingyu and Yank were not to be outdone either. They unleashed their strongest attacks and used their most destructive moves. Boom boom boom. In the next instant, another few tens of palaces were blasted into ruins by blade lights and sword shadows, and over 1,000 members of the Taotai clan were slaughtered miserably. Even those upper Divine Lord Realm guards and lower Divine King Realm deacons could not withstand Xianxia's slaughter. Hundreds of hotshots of the Taotai clan fell from the sky like dumplings. Blood rained down from the sky. There were also several hundred weaker Taotai clansmen. They were still in the palaces and courtyards, but they had been blasted into smithereens. Tao Yongxing, the Grand Priest, and a few other elders witnessed this scene with their own eyes. They were so angry that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets as they gritted their teeth. Although the Taotai clansmen that Xianxia and the rest slaughtered did not have a true powerhouse. But those Taotai clansmen were the backbone of the Taotai clan, their future hope. Xianxia's deranged massacre made God knows how many elites and geniuses perished prematurely in the Taotai clan. One could foresee that within the next 1,000 years, the Taotai clan's power would be greatly reduced. The new generation of Divine King powerhouses would be so few that it would make one's hair stand on end. To a clan this was absolutely a heavy blow. Long Tian, this seat swears that I absolutely won't let you escape from the star-devouring grotto heaven alive. Tao Yongxing was driven mad with rage, his voice roaring like a great bell. However, after Xianxia and the rest cast spells and slaughtered the Taotai clansmen, they fled without the slightest hesitation. Swoosh! They all erupted with the fastest speed, akin to an aurora tearing across the firmament, speeding towards the south. Tao Yongxing, the Grand Priest, and a few other elders hurriedly followed, unleashing a pursuit in a towering rage. However, when flying over the ruined campsite's airspace, Tao Yongxing still hesitated for a bit. Seeing that there were still many clansmen lucky enough to survive in the ruins, he could not help ordering, "Grand Elder, you bring the 3 elders to go and rescue the clansmen who survived. Especially those guards, elite disciples and geniuses, you must think of a way to save them." This Grand Elder was immediately stunned, falling into hesitation and weighing the pros and cons. Although he was so furious that he exploded and very much wanted to follow the Patriarch and the Grand Priest to hunt down Xianxia and the rest. But he knew that while revenge was important, rescuing the clansmen who survived was even more important. Hence he could only nod his head and say that he complied. After that he brought the 3 elders and stayed behind, descending into the ruined campsite at top speed, and rescuing those heavily injured clansmen. Tao Yongxing, the Grand Priest, and Tao Yuxing swept over the campsite's airspace without stopping, chasing towards the south. As time flowed by, the distance between both parties continuously pulled closer. 4,000 miles, 3,000 miles, 2,000 miles. Looking like in another 10 breaths of time, Tao Yongxing would catch up to Ji Tianxing and the rest. And at this time, Ji Tianxing and the rest were only 10,000 miles away from the southernmost part of the star-devouring grotto heaven. Tao Yongxing suddenly reacted and immediately frowned, a cold light flashing in his eyes. They want to escape to the exit of the star-devouring grotto heaven and return to the dragon realm through the exit. Hearing this, the Grand Priest and Tao Yongxing were both stunned. Then the Grand Priest frowned and said, "Only us and the few elders know the secret method to open the exit. He doesn't know the method to open it, and even if he uses the technique to break it, it will take a long time. They can't escape, we can catch him." Tao Yongxing and Tao Yongxing also thought so, and their eyes shone with a hopeful light. However, something unexpected happened. Bai Feng, Chao Qingyu and Yang, who were flying at top speed, were suddenly enveloped by a white light and disappeared into thin air. Obviously, Ji Tianxing had taken them into the Jutian 10 Absolutes Pagoda. Firstly, their speed was relatively slow and they would be caught soon. Secondly, their mission had been completed and there was no point in continuing to follow Ji Tianxing. Just like this, Ji Tianxing burst out with an unbelievable speed and rushed toward the exit by himself. Originally, the distance between Tao Yongxing and him had been reduced to 800 miles. Ji Tianxing suddenly accelerated and the distance between the two of them increased to more than 500 miles. Even so, Tao Yongxing was not worried and continued to chase without slacking. He thought that as long as Ji Tianxing escaped to the exit and used the technique to break the divine array, he would definitely be able to catch up. At that time, he would definitely use the primal chaos primordial bell to capture and suppress Ji Tianxing as soon as possible and not give him a chance to resist. Whoosh! After a few breaths, Ji Tianxing escaped to the southern edge of the star-devouring grotto heaven. 10 miles ahead was the exit of the star-devouring grotto heaven. It was a white light vortex that was hundreds of meters tall. Behind the white light vortex was a translucent spatial barrier. Just as he flew to the exit, Ji Tianxing waved his hands and made a hand seal to open the exit. Tao Yongxing, the Grand Priest, and Tao Yongxing, who had rushed over, were stunned when they saw his familiar and precise movements. Chapter 36-26. D***, what the hell? How did that guy know our secret technique? Could it be that there's a traitor among us? Who is it? Who leaked the method to open the exit? Tao Yongxing, the High Priest, and Tao Yongxing all looked as if they had seen a ghost. They could not believe that Ji Tianxing had actually mastered the method to open the exit. Moreover, he was extremely skilled and used only 2 breaths of time to successfully open the spatial passage. Such speed was not inferior to the High Priest and the Grand Elder at all. As a result, the 3 of them could not help but think that there might be a traitor among the elders and deacons. Someone had taught Ji Tianxing the method to open the exit. Otherwise, it did not make sense at all. At this time, they had not realized the truth of the matter. Ji Tianxing had refined Tao Wangchuan and Tao Changji's godheads and learned the method to open the exit from their divine soul memories. Of course, it would take a few days for them to calm down and think about it carefully before they could guess the truth. Swoosh! The white light vortex opened and a pitch-black spatial passage appeared in the middle. Ji Tianxing did not hesitate and jumped into the white light vortex and was swallowed by the endless darkness. The next moment he left the star-devouring grotto heaven and appeared in the abyss shrouded in clouds. Whoosh! He rushed out of the abyss as fast as an aurora and sped towards the north. Immediately after, Tao Yongxing, the High Priest, and Tao Yongxing, who had regained their senses, also passed through the white light vortex and left the star-devouring grotto heaven. They appeared in the pitch-black abyss. At this time, Ji Tianxing had already flown thousands of miles away. However, Tao Yongxing had no intention of giving up. He immediately led the High Priest and Tao Yongxing to chase after Ji Tianxing. Both parties flew across the sky one after the other, speeding through the sky at a speed faster than the aurora. Previously in the star-devouring grotto heaven, Ji Tianxing was carrying Bai Feng, Yang, and the others, so he could not burst out with his fastest speed. At this moment he was flying across the sky alone and raised his speed to the limit. Only then did Tao Yongxing, the High Priest, and Tao Yongxing, who were chasing after him, witness his true strength and speed. It was no exaggeration to say that Ji Tianxing could travel 20 million miles in a single day when he flew at full speed. Among the 3 people, only Tao Yongxing could keep up. Both the High Priest and Tao Yongxing were slower and would definitely be shaken off. However, Tao Yongxing could not chase after Ji Tianxing alone. He had to bring along the High Priestess and Tao Yuxing in order to have the confidence to deal with Ji Tianqing, Bai Feng and the others. He couldn't move as fast as he could, and he still had to take care of the High Priest and Tao Yuxing. He was exhausted and helpless. After 2 hours of pursuit, Ji Tianqing had left the three of them behind by 20,000 li. At this rate, in at most 10 hours, Ji Tianqing would be 100,000 miles away from them. 100,000 miles had already exceeded the range of Tao Yuxing and the High Priest's divine senses. At that time they would definitely be shaken off by Ji Tianqing. At the thought of this, Tao Yuxing was filled with anxiety, gnashing his teeth in anger. I'm not waiting for you guys. The seat will go and chase after that guy first. The two of you follow behind. Tao Yuxing gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He wanted to speed up and chase after Ji Tianqing. But the High Priest and Tao Yuxing's expressions changed, hurriedly reaching out to pull him back. Clan head, don't be rash. Clan head, this must not happen. The High Priest and Tao Yuxing were filled with worry, urging in an anxious tone. Clan head, even if you can catch up to that bastard, you're alone while he has several helpers. If you are surrounded by them and something happens to you, our clan's losses will be too disastrous. Yeah. To date we've already lost thousands of clan members, many elites and genius disciples. If something happens to you, our clan will definitely be unable to recover from this setback and decline day by day. How could Tao Yuxing not think of this? However, he couldn't just watch as Ji Tianqing escaped right under his nose. He could not take this lying down. Then what else can this seat do? The two of you are too slow. At this rate we'll be shaken off very soon. Tao Yuxing frowned fiercely and growled angrily. Tao Yuxing revealed a deep sense of shame and hurriedly blamed himself and apologized. The High Priest frowned and thought for a moment. Suddenly he had an idea. He stared at Tao Yuxing with a burning gaze and asked in a serious tone, Clan head, are you sure you're not going to let that brat off and must kill him? Nonsense. Tao Yuxing replied in annoyance. We've already formed a blood feud with him. There's only an outcome of life and death. If we don't kill him, how can the thousands of people of our clan die in peace? If we can't strip him of the dragon race bloodline, the golden-winged great roc and the phoenix race bloodline, wouldn't our efforts be in vain? Furthermore, now that things have developed to this stage, our Taotai clan has lost all face. We must kill him to cover up this matter. The High Priest nodded slightly and said in a serious tone, All right. Since the clan head has made up his mind, then I have an idea. It's unrealistic to want to kill him with just the three of us. Isn't he escaping towards the north? With his current speed he'll enter the Ganyang region in at most 2 days. Coincidentally, the Xianxia clan's Nebula Grotto Heaven is in the north of the Ganyang region. We can ask the Xianxia clan to help us. With a pincer attack we can definitely kill Long Tian. Hearing the High Priest's reminder, Tao Yuxing's eyes lit up. However, after thinking carefully he frowned again. Ask the Xianxia clan for help? Although our clan and the Xianxia clan have formed an alliance and are as close as brothers, our clans are also divided. Our clans appear to be united on the surface but are divided at heart. We each have our own thoughts and schemes. If I take the initiative to ask the Xianxia clan for help, they will definitely demand an exorbitant price and take the opportunity to extort us. In fact, after they know that Long Tian has the dragon race bloodline, they might even snatch it. At that time, even if we kill Long Tian, we might not be able to obtain his dragon race bloodline. Tao Yuxing's words made the High Priest and Tao Yuxing frown, their expressions somewhat solemn. After a moment of silence, the High Priest continued, Clan head, since you insist on killing Long Tian, then you have to make some sacrifices. As for the Xianxia clan's conditions, you should be able to discuss it with their clan head personally. If you insist on obtaining the dragon race bloodline, then you have to make it clear in advance. If you're worried, then apart from asking the Xianxia clan for help, we can also send a message to the territorial lords. The Clear Sky Territorial Lord, the Ganyang Territorial Lord, and the territorial lords of the 2 surrounding territories can also help. Tao Yuxing frowned and remained silent. After pondering for a long time, he nodded and agreed to the High Priest's suggestion. Forget it. Looks like this is the safest method for now. Then I'll send a message to them personally. Finished speaking, Tao Yuxing took out one transmission jade slip after another and sent messages to the Xianxia clan and the territorial lords. Chapter 36-27. Not long after, Tao Yuxing received replies from various factions. After reading the replies, his expression was a little complicated. It was just as he had guessed. After the 4 domain lords received his message, they all agreed without hesitation. Especially Clear Sky Domain Lord and Ganyang Domain Lord, they agreed without even asking about the reward and conditions. After all, the star-devouring grotto heaven was in Clear Sky Domain, and Ganyang Domain was next door. These 2 domain lords were more familiar with the Taotai clan, and they had to rely on the Taotai clan and Xianxia clan to be able to sit firmly in their positions. Tao Yongxing personally sent a message to ask for their help. How could they dare to refuse? The other 2 domain lords mentioned the reward and asked about Long Tian's basic situation. But they did not hesitate and agreed immediately, giving Tao Yongxing face. Only the Xianxia clan was very difficult to deal with. The Xianxia clan leader did not agree to Tao Yongxing's request, nor did he refuse directly. Instead, he patiently asked who he wanted to kill. What was that person's appearance and characteristics? What was his cultivation level? What bloodline was he from? What divine weapon did he use? What special abilities and talents did he have? Why did that person become enemies with the Taotai clan? What happened before? The Taotai clan had many experts. How could they need help? There must be something strange about this, right? In short, the Xianxia clan leader was very suspicious, and his questions were very detailed. Everything he said revealed a message. He had to pay more. Tao Yongxing patiently explained the basic situation of Long Tian and the things that had happened before. Of course, he skimmed over all the embarrassing and humiliating matters of the Taotai clan so as to avoid being ridiculed by Patriarch Xianxia. As expected, the Xianxia Patriarch pondered for a long time before replying to him. He could help with this, but he proposed a huge reward and added 2 conditions that gave Tao Yongxing a headache. First, Tao Yongxing had to take out 300 billion worth of ore. Second, the Taotai clan had to give the Xianxia clan a star stone vein every 100 years. Then the Taotai clan had to withdraw 50% of their properties in Ganyang domain and give them to the Xianxia clan. It was really an exorbitant demand. After Tao Yongxing finished reading the jade slip, he was so angry that he directly crushed the jade slip into pieces. He almost cursed out loud. Despicable and shameless bastard, why don't you just rob me? Tao Yongxing roared furiously. His face was distorted with anger. The high priest and Tao Yongxing were very nervous. They waited until his anger had mostly dissipated before carefully asking for the reason. When they heard the Xianxia clan leader's conditions, the 2 of them were filled with anger and cursed. Damned beast. When my clan helped the Xianxia clan in the past, when have I ever been as ruthless as him? If he doesn't want to help, then forget it. Tao Yongxing cursed, then took out his jade slip and sent a message back to Xianxia. Patriarch Shueshang, our 2 clans are allies. Originally, I had high hopes and trust in you. However, I'm very disappointed with the conditions you've proposed. Sorry to disturb you. Just pretend that I didn't say anything. Tao Yongxing's reply was calm and cold. However, not long after, Shueshang, the Xianxia clan leader, actually replied to his message. Shua. The jade slip flew over from the sky and landed in front of Tao Yongxing. He reached out to take the jade slip and sent his divine sense into it. Instantly, Shueshang's hearty laughter rang out in his mind. Ah, brother Tao, calm down. I was just joking with you just now. Since we're brothers in an alliance, of course we have to help each other. Only then can we grow stronger and last forever. Since brother Tao is in trouble, how can I just stand by and do nothing? How about this? I'll eliminate the second condition. I only want 300 billion worth of ores. In the future, brother Tao will give me a star or vein every 100 years. Without a doubt, the Xianxia clan leader's harsh conditions were just to test Tao Yongxing's bottom line. Seeing that Tao Yongxing rejected him decisively, the Xianxia clan leader lowered the reward and conditions. Tao Yongxing's anger dissipated by more than half. He patiently replied to the Xianxia clan leader, and the 2 of them began to bargain. After 3 messages, the 2 of them finally reached a consensus. The Taotai clan only needed to pay 300 billion worth of ores. In addition, they would give the Xianxia clan a star or vein every 200 years until they filled up 10 or veins. This result, the 2 clan leaders could both accept it. This damn fellow finally settled it. After reaching the deal, Tao Yongxing heaved a sigh in relief and cursed under his breath. Although the deal was settled, there was a thorn stuck in his heart from beginning to end. No matter how he calculated, he felt that he lost out greatly. Previously, in the star-devouring grotto heaven, not only did he fail to kill Long Tian, he even let him heavily damage the Taotai clan's camp, damaging the Taotai clan's foundation. Now, in order to request the Xianxia clan to take action and help, he had to bleed heavily again. Calculating carefully, this life of Long Tian's was worth more than 3 trillion. Such a horrifying value, it was almost catching up to the son of the Dragon Emperor, right? At the thought of this, Tao Yongxing was depressed until he wanted to vomit blood, wishing to tear Tao Wangchuan and Tao Zhangji into pieces. Two fools. How did they provoke Long Tian, and even bring him into the star-devouring grotto heaven? The origin of all of this was Tao Wangchuan and Tao Zhangji. If not for the two of them murdering for wealth, the Taotai clan would not be in such a sorry state. Right at this time, the high priest by the side opened his mouth and asked, "Patriarch, you've reached an agreement with Patriarch Xianxia?" Tao Yongxing nodded his head slightly and said, "The terms are already settled." The high priest nodded his head to indicate that he understood and asked, "Then will he personally take action? How many people is he bringing?" Tao Yongxing was stunned for a bit and said with a frown, "Didn't ask about this. This seat will send a message to ask." Finished talking, he took out a transmission jade slip again and sent it to Patriarch Xianxia Shueshang. This time Shueshang only replied to him after an hour. When Tao Yongxing saw the reply in the transmission jade slip, he was immediately unable to restrain his anger, his nose crooked from anger. "Brother Tao, this seed is currently in close seclusion cultivating a divine art. I seriously can't leave and can't take action personally. However, this seat sent the left protector and 3 elders, plus the blood slaughter hall's 100 elites. That's enough, right?" These were Patriarch Xianxia's original words, his tone revealing the meaning of, "I'll handle it, you can rest assured." Tao Yongxing was so angry that his face was livid. He hurriedly sent a message to Shueshang, requesting him to send more people and high-ranking divine kings. He emphasized to Shueshang that although the target to kill this time, Long Tian, was not a high-ranking divine king, he surpassed a high-ranking divine king. However, Shueshang's reply revealed a tone of indifference. Just a Dragon Clan youth who hasn't made a name for himself. Even if he has some means, how powerful can he be? Brother Tao, you also said that Long Tian is not your match. Since that's the case, my clan's left protector and 3 elders will only assist you in intercepting Long Tian. The person who really takes action to kill Long Tian is still you, Brother Tao. Could it be that you don't want to take revenge personally? Chapter 36-28. Tao Yongxing was instantly speechless as he found it hard to refute. It was all a disaster caused by his face. When he told Shueshang about what happened earlier, explaining Ji Tianxing's situation, he didn't divulge the fact that Taotai clan had suffered heavy losses. Shueshang even asked him who was stronger between him and Long Tian. He replied without any hesitation that of course he was stronger. How could Long Tian be mentioned in the same breath as him? Rubbish. He was Taotai clan's clan leader, a 9th stage realm god king. Did he not want his face? Other than Dragon Emperor who ruled various continents, he was known to be invincible under the God Emperor, not fearing any God King's existence. To make him admit that Long Tian was very powerful, making him helpless, that was just too embarrassing. So now it resulted in such an outcome. Shueshang didn't pay too much attention to it, and from the men he sent out, it was a little perfunctory. Unfortunately, Tao Yongxing had already said that, so he couldn't slap his own face. Even if he was bitter and angry, he could only accept it. High priest who was by the side hurriedly consoled after understanding the situation. "Patriarch, please calm down. That Long Tian is indeed nothing to be afraid of. As long as Xianxia clan's experts help to stop him, you can easily kill him alone." Tao Yongxing's face turned black. This seat also knows this logic, but this seat just can't stand it. This seat spent such a huge price to invite Xianxia clan to help. In the end, Shueshang didn't take action personally and only sent the left guardian and 3 elders. This is just too perfunctory. High priest also frowned as he was filled with resentment and didn't know how to console Tao Yongxing. Hence he pointed to the sky in front and changed the topic. "Clan leader, we've been chasing after Long Tian for 8 hours. His speed has been maintained at its peak condition and he has already left us in the dust by 80,000 miles. In another hour's time he will leave our soul trace detection range. By then if he changes his flying direction we'll easily lose him. Tao Yongxing waved his hand and said in an indifferent tone, "No need to worry. Earlier when we exchanged blows with him this seat had injured him. This seat intentionally used the soul-devouring flames energy which remained in his wounds and body, so it's very hard to remove. If we lose him, this king will only need to spend a little time and effort to track the soul-devouring flames aura and estimate his approximate location. As long as he's still in the clear sky and dry sun regions, he won't be able to escape my pursuit." Hearing his words, the high priest and Tao Yuxing heaved a sigh of relief and revealed looks of admiration. Patriarch is indeed far-sighted. Patriarch is wise. The two of them hurriedly flattered him. Tao Yongxing's mood improved and his anger gradually dissipated. 10 hours later. The corners of Ji Tianxing's mouth curled up into a sneer as he sped through the sky like an aurora. "It's been 10 hours and we've already left the star-devouring grotto heaven by 8 million kilometers, yet they're still chasing? He was really persistent. Looks like Tao Yong's anger isn't light. He won't rest until he kills me. Unfortunately, I've already shaken all of you off by 50,000 kilometers, and even your divine senses can't detect me. So how are all of you going to pursue me?" As he spoke, he suddenly changed his direction from north to northwest while maintaining his speed. Not long after, Tao Yongxing and the other two arrived at this place and continued to chase northward. Ji Tianxing had already flown 50,000 kilometers in the northwest direction, and the distance between the two sides would only increase. In the short term, Tao Yongxing and the other two were destined to not be able to catch up to him. About an hour later, Ji Tianxing slowed down his flying speed and used his divine sense to observe behind him. After observing for a long time and not seeing Tao Yongxing and the other two following, he was sure that Tao Yongxing and the other two had lost them. Hence, he took out the Burial of Heaven sword and let the Burial of Heaven sword continue flying while he entered the sword world to handle matters. In a remote place in the sword world, he took out the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda and placed it in the belly of the mountain. He entered the divine pagoda and went to the 3rd, 4th and distorted spacetime to check on everyone's injuries. Bai Feng was on the 3rd level of the divine pagoda, staying in the endless dark and cold wasteland, silently circulating her energy to heal her injuries. Although Bai Feng's injuries were very serious, they were not life-threatening. Ji Tianxing checked, left a pile of divine pills and origin stones for her, and told her to focus on healing her injuries before leaving. Peng Fei was on the 4th level of the divine pagoda, sitting cross-legged above the endless sea. His injuries were the most miserable and his physical body had almost been destroyed. His divine Tao foundation was also affected and his divine power aura was very weak. Ji Tianxing personally used a secret technique to heal his injuries and poured a large amount of divine power into him. As a result, Peng Fei's injuries stabilized and did not continue to worsen. He opened his eyes and bowed to Ji Tianxing to thank him. Ji Tianxing looked at him calmly and asked, "Ever since you came out with me to explore the world, you have almost lost your life twice. Do you regret it?" Peng Fei pursed his lips and did not speak. He shook his head with a determined gaze. Ji Tianxing smiled and continued, "If you regret it, you can leave at any time. I really don't understand you. Why don't you just stay in the 9 mystical caves heaven and be a Peng disciple?" Peng Fei was stunned and asked in astonishment, "Senior, how did you know that I am a disciple of the 9 mystical caves heaven?" Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Is it that hard to guess? The Dragon Realm has a total of 33 caves heaven, and the Astral Source continent has 9. Among these 9 caves heaven, only the 9 mystical caves heaven is the Golden Rock race's nest. The Golden Rock race's bloodline is thin, and they are not as good at reproduction as the other demon races. Thus, the Golden Rock race treasures their bloodline the most, and almost no descendants are left outside. Even if there is a Golden Rock bloodline outside, once the Golden Rock race finds out, they will think of a way to find it." Peng Fei was a little stunned. He scratched his head and asked, "Senior, you know so much about my race. Do you have some relationship with my race?" Ji Tianxing smiled and said playfully, "I don't have any relationship with the Golden Rock race, but I have a good relationship with the Dragon Kings and Dragon Emperors of the 4 seas and 5 continents. Of course, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor of the Astral Source continent is an exception." Peng Fei was stunned. He asked, So, you plan to leave the astral source continent and go to other continents? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, I do plan to do so, but before I leave the astral source continent, I want to go to a place. Where? Ping Fei asked instinctively. The 9 mystical caves heaven, Ji Tianqing answered. Ah. Peng Fei's expression changed instantly. He begged with a bitter face, Senior, please don't send me back. Although I know that I am weak and can't help you, I will always be a burden to you. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and explained, I am not going to the 9 mystical caves heaven to send you back. I am going to find your Golden Rock patriarch or tribe leader. Find our patriarch or tribe leader. Peng Fei was even more confused. Yes. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a low voice, I am going to ask them for information and verify something. Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 36-29. Peng Fei could not figure out why Senior Long Tian was looking for the Golden Rock Patriarch. As far as he knew, the Golden Rock Patriarch had not shown himself in the 9 mystical caves for thousands of years. For a powerhouse like the Patriarch, his children had already spread out and were independent. He no longer cared about worldly affairs. Now the Patriarch's only wish and goal was to reach the peak of the divine path and surpass the divine king realm. If Senior Long Tian asked the Patriarch about the past 1,000 years, the Patriarch would definitely not know. Unless it was to inquire about what happened 1,000 years ago. That was still possible. However, Senior Long Tian did not have any relationship with the Golden Rock race. How could he have met the Golden Rock Patriarch? Peng Fei was puzzled, but he could not figure it out. He could only suppress this thought. He remembered that he was about to return to the 9 mystical caves and could not help but mutter, Senior, it's fine if you ask for information, but don't leave me alone after sending me back. Although he did not hate the 9 mystical caves, he did not have a good impression of them. After all, this was related to his life and origin. He had an unpleasant past. Furthermore, his status in the 9 mystical wonderland was rather awkward. He was not a disciple with mediocre talent, nor was he a direct descendant with a strong backer. They belonged to the category of rootless duckweeds that were above average. They would not be bullied, but no one was willing to care for them. This situation lasted for more than 800 years. Peng Fei felt bored and awkward, so he decided to leave the 9 mystical caves and explore the outside world. Fortunately, the deacons and elders of the Golden Rock race were not angry because of this. He was not punished. Instead, the Golden Rock race secretly asked someone to take care of him in the mortal world. The master of Mount Wuhua, his master, and the Green Lotus Domain Lord were the 2 divine kings who were ordered to take care of him. His master and the Green Lotus Domain Lord thought he did not know about this. In fact, he was not a fool. How could he not know? Peng Fei's heart wavered as he thought of the past. Ji Tianqing visited Bai Feng and Ping Fei before returning to the distorted spacetime to visit Chao Qingyu and Yank. Now these doyens who had followed him from the God realm to the Dragon realm had all won his trust. In terms of the treatment of the cultivation environment, this was the most obvious manifestation. For example, Chao Qingyu, Yank and Lan Er could stay in the distorted spacetime for a long time and cultivate in seclusion under the blood flame sacred tree. Before this, only Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, Bai Long, Hei Long, Qian Yu and Jin Hong were qualified to enter this place. Of course, Xue Lin, Sir God Blood Illusion, Left Emissary Jean and Blood Dragon Right Emissary were also accepted, even though they were loyal and sincere to Ji Tianqing. However, the main reason why they could come to the distorted spacetime to cultivate was not because of this. It was because they were cultivating in Xue Lin's godly ship. Their progress was simply too slow. Speaking of which, only 3 to 4 years had passed in the outside world, and their strength had not improved much. However, everyone who cultivated in the distorted spacetime had undergone a great change and improved rapidly. Ji Tianqing felt that if this were to continue, he would be favoring one over the other and making Lin Xue, Sir God Blood Illusion and the rest disappointed. Therefore he transferred Xue Lin and the rest into the distorted spacetime not long ago. Currently, there were already 14 Sir God and Godly King experts gathered in the distorted spacetime. There were members of the God clan, the Human clan, as well as the Demon clan's Divine Dragon and Heavenly Fox. More than 10 experts were cultivating in seclusion under the blood flame sacred tree. All of them were emitting 5-colored divine light and brimming with vast and mighty divine power. It was indeed spectacular. Ji Tianqing took a look. Chao Qingyu and Yank's injuries were very serious. However, their lives were not in danger. They just needed to cultivate in seclusion for more than 10 years to fully recover. This result was acceptable. After all, they had loyally carried out their duties and worked so hard. Therefore, Ji Tianxing took out many healing elixirs and resources and placed them in front of the two of them. Then he left a jade slip for Yank. There was only one sentence in it. When your injuries have fully recovered or when you have free time, help me refine and purify the mineral veins. Next. Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged under the blood flame sacred tree and started to check his injuries. He also took stock of his gains in the star-devouring cave. He circulated his power for 2 cycles and checked every corner of his body. He found a total of 9 injuries. 7 of them were new injuries. The other 2 were old injuries that he had suffered outside the Golden Source Dragon Emperor's Xuanji cave. Fortunately, these injuries were not serious and did not affect him much. Ji Tianxing took elixirs and used secret healing techniques. He healed his injuries in just 2 months. Then he started to take stock of his spoils. First, there were 2 God King Experts quintessence fragments. One belonged to the 3rd Elder Tao Rongxin. It was a 7th Heaven God King Realm quintessence fragment. It contained more than 430 divine Tao laws. The other belonged to the 7th Elder. He was the weakest at 6th Heaven God King Realm. The number of divine Tao laws in the quintessence fragment was also relatively small. There were only 390 of them. Regarding this, Ji Tianxing felt that it was a pity. It would be great if he could kill Tao Yongxing and the High Priest. They were the 2 giants of the Taotai clan. They had at least 600 divine Tao laws. Unfortunately, he would only have the chance to realize this in the future. In addition to the 2 quintessence fragments, Ji Tianxing also had 6 huge mountains in his interspatial ring. Within each mountain there was a vein of ore. There were 5 star mineral veins and 1 heavenly red cloud gold mineral vein. These were rare treasures that were hard to find in the mortal world. They were excellent materials for refining king-grade divine artifacts. Ji Tianxing used his divine power and melted the 6 mountains. Instantly, the dirt and impurities on the 6 mountains were removed. They shrunk by half and became metal lumps the size of hills. Of course, they only looked like lumps of metal. They had a metallic luster and were shining with dazzling divine light. In reality, they were still ores. They had to be refined and purified to obtain the pure star divine gold and heavenly red cloud gold. Ji Tianxing roughly estimated that after refining and purifying these 6 hills of ores, he should be able to exchange them for 300 million pieces of divine gold. That would be worth at least 400 billion. To any upper god king, this was equivalent to his lifetime's worth of wealth. Unfortunately, to the Taotai clan who is sitting on a mountain of gold, this can only make them angry. Can't make them feel heartache. If I have the chance to go to the star-devouring grotto heaven in the future, I would be letting myself down if I don't dig up hundreds of mines. Ji Tianxing muttered in his heart. He took out the 6 hills of ores one by one and sent them to the void in front of Yank with a wave of his hand. When Yank finished healing and saw the jade slip he left behind, he would start refining and purifying. After Yank refined the star divine gold and heavenly red cloud gold, he would also have to put upgrading the Sword of Burial of Heaven on the agenda. After all, the ones he came into contact with now were all upper god kings. The Sword of Burial of Heaven, which was a mid-grade king-grade divine artifact, was already somewhat inadequate. Chapter 3630. After dealing with the 6 mines, Ji Tianxing looked into the interspatial ring for the last spoils of war. 2 lotus-like flowers with 9 petals the size of a wash basin. A high-grade king-level treasure. Star-devouring flower. Although there were only 2 divine flowers, their value was immeasurable. In the current dragon realm, even if someone offered 100 billion divine stones for 1 flower, they might not be able to buy it. It was not that the flower was really valuable but that it was too rare and precious. According to Ji Tianxing's knowledge, in the entire dragon realm, only the star-devouring grotto heaven and a few ancient forbidden grounds had produced star-devouring flowers. Therefore, before he went to the star-devouring grotto heaven, he was thinking about the star-devouring flower. Only the barbarians of the Taotai clan who were not good at refining weapons or pills would not care about the star-devouring flower. As a result, Ji Tianxing easily plucked 2 flowers while escaping. If it were those god clans in the god realm, they would have sent troops to guard the star-devouring flower long before it sprouted. Ji Tianxing held the 2 star-devouring flowers in his hands and temporarily fell into hesitation and consideration. Should I directly use the devouring divine ability to swallow and refine these 2 divine flowers? Or should I spend a lot of time and effort to refine them into the 9 revolution star rhyme pill before consuming them? Swallowing and refining directly was simple and straightforward and saved time. Although his devouring divine ability was very powerful and could not waste the divine flower's medicinal power, doing so would only allow the divine flowers to unleash 80% of their effects. Refining the 9 revolution star rhyme pill was tedious and time-consuming, but it could allow the divine flowers to unleash 120% of their effects. Ji Tianxing calculated for a while and finally chose the latter. Forget it, the star-devouring flower is something that can only be chanced upon and not sought. It will probably be very difficult to obtain it in the future. I can't waste it recklessly. I'll just spend 2 to 3 years refining it into the 9 revolution star rhyme pill. Therefore he began to rummage through the interspatial ring, searching for all kinds of supplementary materials and herbs needed to refine the pill. The 9 revolution star rhyme pill was a high-grade king-level divine pill. Most high-grade divine kings might not even know how to refine it. Firstly, the refining method was too mysterious and complicated. Secondly, it required too many materials. 17 types of herbs and 9 types of supplementary materials. In addition to the main ingredient, the star-devouring flower, there were a total of 27 materials to refine the 9 revolutions star rhyme pill. Such a troublesome divine pill that required so many supplementary materials and herbs was rare in the alchemy world, and it had never been welcomed by alchemists. Ji Tianxing rummaged through the ring for an hour. He had almost checked all the tens of thousands of resources and miscellaneous items in the ring. In the end, he only found 13 types of medicinal herbs and 7 types of supplementary materials. I'm still short of 4 medicinal herbs and 2 supplementary materials. It's just troublesome. Ji Tianxing put away the 13 types of medicinal herbs and 7 types of supplementary materials. He got up and went to look for Yunyao Jiku and Chao Qingyu. These god kings might have the herbs and supplementary materials he needed in their personal savings and spatial rings. After all, the herbs and auxiliary materials were not too rare. Most of them were low-grade king-level materials, and only 2 were mid-grade king-level materials. With an apologetic smile, Ji Tianxing went to wake up Yunyao Jiku and Chao Qingyu, who were still cultivating in seclusion. They were not dissatisfied with his interruption. Instead, they gave him an understanding and encouraging smile. Everyone was also carefully searching through their spatial rings. 4 hours later, Ji Tianxing had 2 more supplementary materials and 2 more medicinal herbs. Unfortunately, he was still short of 2 more medicinal herbs. Ji Tianxing sighed helplessly. He put away the 9 supplementary materials and the 15 medicinal herbs and muttered to himself, "It seems that refining the 9 revolutions star rhyme pill can only be put aside for a while." The 9 revolutions star rhyme pill was not only high-grade and precious, but it was also very effective. Not only could it heal the injuries of the god body and god head, but it could also increase one's strength and strengthen one's body in all aspects. Thus Ji Tianxing would not give up. He had to refine it no matter what. He had reached the peak of the 5th level of the Divine King realm. It would be difficult for him to break through to the 6th level of the Divine King realm in a short period of time if he did not have an opportunity or a test of life and death. Therefore, the 9 revolutions star rhyme pill might be his opportunity. Forget it. I'll refine the 2 Godhead fragments first before I study the heaven-punishing divine skill to increase my strength. Ji Tianxing collected his thoughts and began to refine the 2 Godhead fragments. He had done this countless times. Naturally, he was familiar with it. In just 1 month he had refined the 2 Godhead fragments. His strength had increased again. He had taken away 15 types of divine Tao laws and refined some of Tao Rong Xian's memories. This gave him a deeper understanding of the Tao Tai tribe's current situation. At the same time, the number of divine Tao laws that he had mastered had reached 540. Next, he cultivated the heaven-punishing divine skill. Currently, he had already cultivated to the 4th level. Many years ago, he had already deduced the 4th level of the skill. In the process of cultivation, he had constantly gained new insights and experiences. He had further modified and perfected the 4th level of the skill. When the 4th level of the skill reached perfection, he could cultivate to peak 6th level Divine King realm with ease. However, he had a strong premonition that if he wanted to assault the 7th level Divine King realm and become a high-ranking Divine King, then he must deduce the 5th level of the heaven-punishing divine skill. The burial of heaven sword was akin to a wisp of black light, akin to pitch-black lightning streaking across above the firmament. It had already flown continuously for 3 days. Now it arrived at the northwestern border of the clear sky domain and was about to leave the clear sky domain. Even though its speed was that tiny bit slower compared to Ji Tianxing when he flew at full speed. But it was also calm and tranquil along the way these 3 days. It did not attract anyone's attention. The way it saw it, the few powerhouses of the Taotai tribe had long been shaken off by Ji Tianxing. Now it should be able to leave the clear sky domain safe and sound without any surprise or danger. But very unfortunately, a scene that it did not expect appeared. Just as it crossed over the sky above the towering mountains and precipitous ridges, leaping over the vast sea of clouds. Above the sea of clouds on the right, several streaks of dazzling divine light actually lit up, piercing over like thunder. Whoosh, whoosh whoosh whoosh. There were a total of 4 streaks of divine light. All of them were multicolored and filled with divine power. Within each streak of divine light, there was a figure of a demon tribe powerhouse. Moreover, those 4 streaks of divine light chased over from the right rear. They locked onto the burial of heaven's sword with formless divine consciousness. They were clearly here to intercept it. The burial of heaven did not recognize the divine king powerhouses within those 4 streaks of divine light. It also did not want to have any contact with them. It unleashed its full power without hesitation and accelerated towards the northwestern direction. Whoosh. Its normal flying speed was slightly slower than Ji Tianxing's. But when it sped up recklessly, its speed was actually slightly faster than Ji Tianxing's full-speed flight. It instantly transformed into a streak of pitch-black aurora and disappeared at the end of the vast sea of clouds. Those 4 streaks of divine light that chased over were clearly stunned. But after they reacted, they seemed to have confirmed something and accelerated even more excitedly. They had no intention of giving up on intercepting the burial of heaven's sword. Moreover, their expressions were not worried at all. They looked as if they had a card up their sleeve. While speeding up to catch up to the burial of heaven's sword, they were also communicating with each other through divine consciousness. Our target should be in that sword. That's right. When clan leader Tao sent a message to this king, he mentioned that kid's description and appearance as well as the weapon he used. It was a pitch-black divine sword. That divine sword is quite alert. The moment it saw us appear, it sped up and ran away without saying anything. Run away? Can it run away? Clan leader Tao's inescapable net has long been spread out. Chapter 36-31. Whoosh. The burial of heaven cut through the sky like a bolt of black lightning. It was so fast that it couldn't be seen with the naked eye. It maintained a high level of vigilance. As it guarded its surroundings, it stared at the sky in front of it. Below is the border of clear sky region. After crossing this majestic mountain range, I will be able to leave clear sky region and enter Ganyang region. The 4 divine kings just now weren't experts from Taotai clan. They should be helpers that Tao Yongxing invited. In the world within the sword, Ji Tianxing, who was awakened by the burial of heaven, was standing in the sky and muttering to himself. He used the burial of heaven's perspective to observe the world outside the sword and analyze the current situation. I didn't expect Tao Yongxing to be so ruthless and insist on killing everyone. Since he invited helpers, I'm afraid he has forces not only in Clear Sky region but also in Ganyang region? Ji Tianxing didn't need to guess to know that Taotai clan had occupied Clear Sky region for tens of thousands of years. The surrounding regions must have been infiltrated by Taotai clan. Not to mention that the surrounding regions were controlled by Taotai clan, at least there were forces of Taotai clan lurking in them. Even the leaders of a few regions and other top forces had to give face to Taotai clan. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing was 70 to 80% sure that there was an ambush in Ganyang region ahead. However, he thought of a very important question. I've already shaken off Tao Yongxing and the high priest. They should be thousands of miles away now, right? Moreover, I didn't travel personally and didn't leave any divine power aura in the world. What method did he use to sense that I escaped in this direction and accurately calculate the time I would take to reach the border? Ji Tianxing frowned as he pondered. He vaguely felt that this was a big problem. If he didn't solve it as soon as possible, it would be very difficult for him to escape the pursuit of Taotai clan. Unfortunately, he paid the most attention to the cultivation of sword doctrine in his previous life, followed by formation doctrine, followed by alchemy and weapon refinement. As for tracking and deduction doctrine, he rarely dabbled in them. He could only be considered a beginner and not proficient enough. He deeply suspected that Tao Yongxing might have mastered some tracking and deduction doctrine to be able to calculate the direction and progress of his escape. Otherwise, this matter would be hard to explain. He decided to consult Bai Feng after this matter was over. After all, Bai Feng also mastered a similar divine secret skill and was proficient in tracking and deduction doctrine. Back when he was on the boundless heaven continent of the divine realm, those divine envoys had used Bai Feng in order to accurately pinpoint his location and send a large number of troops to intercept and kill him. And now Tao Yongxing was similar to him. There must be some similarities between them. Just as Ji Tianqing was pondering, the buried heaven sword had already crossed the towering mountain range and left the clear sky territory. The sky in front of him was still a vast sea of clouds and the sky was blue. However, the earth had changed. Of heaven of heaven. Of heaven of ofs. Of heaven of heaven. Of. At this moment an even greater danger appeared. Teat of heavens, of God of. Swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, 18 beams of God of light shot into the sky and reached the top of the sea of clouds. They were 18 demon clan divine lords in blood-red armor. They were murderous. They looked like jackals and wolves. Their bodies were like tigers and leopards. They had a pair of wide wings on their backs. They were obviously not from the Taotai clan. They flew above the sea of clouds and quickly spread out. They formed an arc of defense in the sky. The 18 high-level divine lords all gripped their weapons tightly as they stared intently at the pitch-black divine sword flying towards them. The distance between the two parties was getting closer. 10,000 miles, 9,000 miles, 8,000 miles, 7,000 miles. Ji Tianqing carefully observed the 18 sanguine armor divine lords through the heavens barrier sword's perspective. After looking at it for a while, he suddenly frowned and came to a realization. It's the Xianxia clan. Look at their attire. Could they be the elites of the Xianxia clan's blood massacre hall? 1,000 years ago, Ji Tianqing had met the Xianxia clan when he was wandering in the Dragon Realm. Of course, it wasn't a pleasant thing. The Xianxia clan and the Taotai clan were the vicious ones among the 7 noble clans of the Demon clan. They were not as good as the other 5 in terms of character and style. After all, these 2 clans were considered outliers among the orthodox demon clans. Strictly speaking, they should be called ferocious beasts. Before the ancient times, when the dragon, phoenix, and Qilin first established the Dragon Realm, the Xianxia clan and the Taotai clan were ferocious beasts. Countless demon clans avoided them. One liked to kill and pillage. The other liked to devour living beings and plunder resources. Therefore, the Xianxia clan and the Taotai clan were very powerful. No demon clans dared to provoke them. Fortunately, the dragon, phoenix, and Qilin clans were all gods. They had many powerful overlords. The almighty experts of the dragon and phoenix races had made their moves, killing countless magnates of the Xianxia and Taotai races. That was how they managed to suppress the arrogance of the 2 races, making the other races of the dragon world applaud in joy. After the age of chaos ended, order and rules were established in the Dragon Realm. All the clans began to live in peace. The Xianxia and Taotai clans were hated, feared, and ostracized by other demon clans. It seemed that they could not survive in the Dragon Realm. Therefore, the ancestors of the 2 clans went to hug the Dragon clan's thighs. In the process of the Dragon clan pacifying the world and unifying all the demon clans, the Xianxia and Taotai clans also made a lot of contributions. In order to appease the 2 clans, the Dragon clan included them in the 7 noble clans of the Demon clan. They could continue to live and reproduce in the Dragon Realm. The descendants of the Xianxia and Taotai clans were smart. In the following tens of thousands of years, they had been well-behaved and did not dare to cause trouble in the world. Even if they did commit crimes, they did it on a small scale. They did not dare to alarm the dragon emperors. At the same time, they were very cautious. They were very good at covering up the truth, cleaning up after themselves and hiding information. These were all ancient legends. Ji Tianqing had heard of them before. Therefore, he did not have a good impression of the Xianxia and Taotai clans. There was another point. These 2 clans were not only brothers in distress, but they also secretly formed an alliance to advance and retreat together. The star-devouring grotto heaven that the Taotai clan occupied was in the clear sky territory. Coincidentally, the blessed grotto heaven that the Xianxia clan occupied was in the Ganyang territory next door. Although there would be some friction between the two clans occasionally, most of the time, especially when they were doing bad things, they were still quite united. Damn it. I actually neglected this matter. I should have known that the Xianxia clan is in the Ganyang territory. Ji Tianqing frowned. A cold light flashed in his eyes and his expression was serious. Of course, if he wanted to leave the clear sky territory and go to the Golden Rock clan's 9 mystical grotto heaven, the Ganyang territory was a place he had to pass through. It could not be helped. The 9 mystical grotto heaven was at the northwest edge of the Starsource continent, right next to the endless divine ocean. He could not go around 2 or 3 territories just to avoid the Xianxia clan, right? What was done could not be undone. It was useless to say anything. He only wanted to know who else the Xianxia clan sent besides the 18 elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 36-32. The Hall of Blood Slaughter is here. Black Sword ahead. Stop. When the Burial of Heaven was still 3,000 miles away from the Hall of Blood Slaughter elites, the 18 blood armor divine lords shouted in unison. Their cold and austere voices were truly awe-inspiring. Unfortunately, it was of no use. It could not temporarily increase their strength, nor could it slow down the Burial of Heaven. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. On the contrary, the Burial of Heaven sped up. It was like a bolt of black lightning stabbing straight at one of the blood armor divine lords. The Burial of Heaven was very fast. Only a high god king could compare to it. As for these high divine lord realm blood slaughter hall elites, they were basically unable to clearly see the trajectory of the heaven-bearing sword. All they could do was shout, "Be careful," and counterattack with their weapons. Of course, it was all in vain. Bam! The Burial of Heaven easily pierced through the forehead of the first Hall of Blood Slaughter elite, instantly shattering his godhead and causing a spray of blood. Then the Burial of Heaven pierced through his head. It streaked across the sky like a bolt of black lightning, accurately stabbing into the second Hall of Blood Slaughter elite. It still hit him in the forehead, pierced his brain and shattered his godhead. It was an instant kill. The Burial of Heaven pierced through the back of the second person's head and attacked the third Hall of Blood Slaughter elite. The same scene played out once more. Then the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. Muffled sounds rang out one after another, accompanied by streaks of blood blooming in the sky. The Heaven-Bearer sword was like a death curse, instantly taking the lives of 9 elites of the Hall of Bloody Slaughter. All of them were killed in one strike as fast as the aurora. The 9 Blood Slaughter Hall elites who were instantly killed all had huge bloody holes in their foreheads, but their corpses were still in good condition. Then they fell from the sky at high speed. If it were any other time, these high divine lord realm Blood Slaughter Hall elites were all powerhouses whose names shook a region in the Ganyang region. No matter which divine nation they were in, they would be respected figures like divine generals, marshals and imperial preceptors. However, under Burial of Heaven's sword he didn't even have the chance to escape and was instantly killed. The other 9 elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall were lucky enough to survive because they were relatively far away. After all, the 18 elites had spread out and formed a long line of defense. No matter how fast the Burial of Heaven's sword was, it still took a breath's time to kill 9 elites in a row. Witnessing this scene with their own eyes, the 9 elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall who were scared out of their wits no longer dared to brandish their weapons and attack. Naturally, he retreated with all his might, bursting forth with his fastest speed and escaping without a trace. The sword of Burial of Heaven immediately gave chase and followed them to the north. Swish! In the blink of an eye, the sword of Burial of Heaven caught up with 3 more Bloodbath Hall elites and killed them instantly. However, just as it was about to chase after the other 6 elites, several beams of divine light suddenly attacked from the front. Those were divine abilities unleashed by godly king experts. They were extremely powerful. Swish, swish, swish. There were ice blades and frost swords that blotted out the sky, divine flames that transformed into a rain of arrows and giant blades, as well as mountain-sized phantoms of ferocious beasts and various lightning bolts. Ji Tianqing, who was in the sword world, instantly determined that these were divine abilities unleashed by 4 high godly kings. They finally appeared? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and muttered to himself. At the same time he appeared in the sky out of thin air and put away the sword of burial of heaven. With a swish he disappeared. It was as if he had never appeared. This world still had his aura, but they couldn't find any trace of him even after searching for hundreds of thousands of miles. Rumble. Boom. 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 The sky-blotting ice blades and frost swords, the rain of fire arrows, the giant blades, and the other spells all missed their target and crashed into the heaven and earth. Along with the earth shaking and heaven shaking loud noises, the grassland within a radius of 30,000 miles was blasted into ruins. The ground cracked and the ruins within 30,000 miles were all scorched earth. There were ravines and deep pits everywhere. Endless dust and flames surged up and covered the sky, causing the place to be in chaos. A few more pitch-black cracks appeared in the sky and turbulent void storms flashed past. Such a terrifying sound made the few godly kings in the sky from the south tremble with fear. They hadn't reached the battlefield yet, but they were secretly communicating with each other and exclaiming, "This is the technique of a high godly king? It's really terrifying. It must be the elders and guardians of the Xianxia tribe. That kid is dead for sure." Nonsense. When those high godly kings attacked together, even tens of thousands of miles were destroyed, let alone that kid from the dragon clan. The Xianxia tribe has always been violent, and they are harder to get along with than the Taotai tribe. Later you have to watch your words. Don't anger the Xianxia tribe's experts. Understood, understood. Thank you for the reminder, Region Master Gonyang. As they spoke, the four godly kings had already passed through the smoke-filled sky and arrived at the scene of the incident. At this moment they saw four godly king experts 10,000 miles away in the sky. They were searching around with gloomy expressions. The four godly kings were all from the Xianxia tribe. They all looked like wolves, tigers and leopards with blood-red wings on their backs. The person in the lead was extremely powerful. His aura was majestic and his divine might was vast. He was an old man with purple hair. He wore dark blue armor and held a soul slasher that was more than 3 feet long in his right hand. The other 3 Xianxia tribe's godly kings were 2 old men and a middle-aged man. They all wore purple divine armor. In comparison they were slightly weaker. Region Master Gonyang was the most familiar with the Xianxia tribe. He hurriedly introduced them to Fairski through voice transmission. That's the left guardian of the Xianxia tribe. There are also the 6th, 7th and 8th elders. The left guardian is an 8th stage high godly king. The 6th and 7th elders are 7th stage godly kings. Only the 8th elder is younger. He's 6th stage godly king. Hearing Domain Master Gonyang's introduction, Domain Master Qing Kong felt more confident in her heart and secretly thanked him. Then the 4 of them hurriedly flew over and greeted the left guardian and the others. Greetings to the left guardian and the various elders. The 4 region masters and deputy region masters were very humble. Their expressions and tone were very respectful. The left guardian turned a deaf ear to them and even ignored them. He closed his eyes and executed his divine ability to search for the target's whereabouts. The 6th elder was afraid that the 4 of them would feel awkward. He waved his hand and said, "Everyone, there's no need to be so courteous. Let's get down to business first." The 4 region masters and deputy region masters were stunned and revealed a puzzled expression. Region Master Gonyang couldn't help but ask, "6th elder, you guys attacked earlier. Didn't you kill that kid?" The 6th elder frowned and said angrily, "That kid didn't show up at all. Now even that black sword has disappeared." The 4 region masters were speechless. Their relaxed mood was lifted up again. Seeing their strange expressions, the 6th elder also felt awkward. He was afraid that he would tarnish the Xianxia tribe's reputation and be looked down upon. Therefore he added a few more words to explain. "We attacked just to save the 6 elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall. We wanted to stop the Black Sword and force that kid to show up. We wanted to confirm the target before attacking. Who would have thought that he would disappear into thin air?" Chapter 36-33. The 6th elder was only explaining for the sake of the Xianxia tribe's reputation. Unfortunately, it would have been better if he did not explain. His explanation embarrassed the Xianxia tribe even more. Moreover, the left protector had always been a man of few words. He was cold and emotionless. He immediately opened his eyes and glared at the 6th elder with a piercing gaze. The 6th elder trembled in fear. He immediately shut his mouth and shifted his gaze elsewhere. The 4 region leaders were not fools. When they understood the truth, they also knew that the Xianxia tribe had been embarrassed. The left protector was burning with rage. Therefore they spread out and used their powers to search for Zhi. They also said some things to ease the awkwardness. That damned little bastard. Just as clan leader Tao said, he is extremely cunning. Yes. We underestimated him. That's why he hid. Haha. That brat is still afraid of us. He doesn't dare to fight us head-on. That's why he is a coward. Everyone, let's work together and find that brat as soon as possible. We must tear him into pieces. On the surface, it sounded like they were discussing battle tactics. However, in reality they were helping the 4 Xianxia tribe to ease the awkwardness. This was effective. The left protector's gloomy expression eased. He closed his eyes and continued searching. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Afterwards, the 8 god kings spread out and carefully searched every inch of space within a radius of 100,000 kilometers. It wasn't just the sky and the earth that they searched. They even used spatial magics to search the 3 inner and outer dimensions of the Starry River. Unfortunately, after searching for a few minutes, they still did not find anything. They could faintly sense that there was a foreign divine power aura left in the air. It should be Long Tian's. However, no matter what they did, they could not find him. Obviously, Zhi had used the same trick again. He used the Armillary Heaven secret technique and merged with the 200,000 miles of space. In other words, he was the 200,000 miles of space. This space was him. The 8 godly kings were right in front of him, but no one could find him. This should be the most advanced concealment technique, right? With Zhi current strength, coupled with his profound attainments in the Muddy Heaven secret technique, it was likely that only peak divine kings and God Emperor would be able to find clues. These 8 divine king powerhouses could not guess the answer even if they racked their brains. However, blindly hiding and evading was not Zhi goal. The reason he'd concealed himself was because he still wasn't sure exactly how many God King experts were trying to kill him. What were the identities of these God King powerhouses? What were their strengths? Now half an hour had passed. He eavesdropped on the conversation between the God Kings and roughly figured out the identities of the 8 God Kings. At the same time, he also clearly saw through the 8 divine kings' strength realms. He, who was the embodiment of heaven and earth, pondered silently in his mind. Only 4 domain lords, vice domain lords, and 4 Xianxia race godly kings? Are there no other god kings lying in ambush here? He had already transformed into a world of 200,000 kilometers. Naturally, he could clearly sense that there were only these 8 god kings within 200,000 kilometers. In addition, there were 6 blood slaughter hall elites. They were all ant-like characters and were selectively ignored by him. If there were 2 9th-degree realm god kings, perhaps I would have to put in some effort to kill some of them and then find a way to escape. Since there's only this little power, then I'll kindly accept it. After grasping the almost perfect devouring divine ability, these 8 god kings were no different from nourishment and divine power in Zhi eyes. Very quickly he began his silent hunting operation. The first person he targeted was the vice domain lord of Gonyang region. This fellow was a middle-level god king with only the strength of a 5th-level god king. He was at the east of the battlefield, scouting the surrounding 30,000 kilometers alone. The closest people to him, Gonyang region lord and Xianxia race's 8th elder, were 30,000 kilometers away. With a thought, Zhi appeared behind him out of thin air. The distance was less than 10,000 feet. He was concentrating on releasing his divine sense with all his might to scout the alternate space around him. Zhi sudden appearance brought about a very weak and almost imperceptible spatial fluctuation. Because the distance was too close, he still sensed the abnormality and subconsciously turned around to swing his sword. Unfortunately, he was still one step too slow. Swoosh. Zhi had already raised the sword of burial of heaven and pierced out a cold golden light. Then it disappeared and returned to heaven and earth. He was very confident in this sword. This was one of his sword Dao divine abilities, Daylight Sword. The vice domain lord of Gonyang region only saw a sesame-sized cold light expand thousands of times in front of him. In the next moment he was swallowed by the sword light that was as dazzling as the sun. Bang! In the deafening loud noise, the daylight sword, which was like a scorching sun and a shooting star, smashed the vice domain lord of Gonyang region into pieces. Countless fragments of divine light burst out. He was like ice and snow under the scorching sun. His divine body collapsed and quickly melted away. Only the toughest divine spark was not melted by the ice and snow. It was blasted into more than 20 pieces and fell from the sky. The soft armor he wore, the divine sword he held, and the specially made robe were all shattered and twisted. Countless fragments fell from the sky. Only the interspatial ring was the least damaged. It was still intact and fell from the sky. Before the fragments fell from the sky, the vice-domain lord of Ganyang region and the 8th elder of the Xianxia tribe 30,000 miles away sensed something unusual and turned their heads to look at the scene of the incident. When they saw the vice-domain lord of Ganyang region explode and shatter into pieces, their eyes widened and their faces were filled with shock. Damn bastard. How dare he launch a sneak attack? And he killed him in one move. Even if he was slightly weaker, he was still a 5th-level divine king. How could he be killed in one move before he could warn or escape? These thoughts flashed through their minds at the same time. They were both very shocked. In the next moment, the two divine kings realized what had happened. They immediately felt scared and became very vigilant. Since that kid had launched a sneak attack and killed a divine king, it was very likely that one of them would be next. Almost at the same time when the two of them had this thought, behind the 8th elder, a figure silently appeared. He was wearing a white robe and was tall and sturdy. There was a dragon horn on his forehead and golden dragon scales on the surface of his body. There was no doubt that it was Zhou Xian. The 8th elder was only a god king in the 6th degree realm. In terms of strength and realm, he was slightly higher than Zhou Xian. But in terms of combat power, even 10 of him would not be enough to kill Zhou Xian. Swoosh. Zhou Xian appeared in a flash and stabbed with his sword again. He quickly disappeared and returned to heaven and earth. He was very confident in this sword and did not give the 8th elder a chance to counterattack or dodge. The reason why he appeared for a moment and hid in heaven and earth after stabbing with his sword was that he did not want to expose more information and let the other divine kings see through him. Chapter 36-34. Although the 8th elder was very vigilant and noticed the space ripple behind him in time, he instantly realized that Long Tian had attacked him. At this moment, his nerves were stretched to the limit, and his divine power was also unleashed to the maximum. Without any hesitation, he immediately used space diversion to move 1,000 miles to avoid Long Tian's attack. However, when he used space diversion, he realized that the surrounding space had been sealed. It was sealed off by the 30-meter-long sword light that was so condensed that it seemed to be solid. After all, the sword ray contained more than 200 divine Dao laws and released terrifying sword energy, pressure, and space divine power. It's over. When the 8th elder failed to teleport, this word flashed through his mind and his eyes were filled with despair. Even if he swung his sword in time, unleashed all his power and used his divine power to counterattack, it was already too late. The failure of teleportation delayed him by 1/3 of an instant, which determined his death. It couldn't be helped. The outcome of a battle between godly king experts was usually decided in an instant. The 8th elder was still in the posture of swinging his sword, and his divine sword was emitting a 300-meter-long sword ray. Boom! Unfortunately, before his divine sword could swing, the 30-meter-long golden sword ray pierced his head. The golden sword light did not seem to be huge, nor did it have a heaven-shaking might. However, it was indestructible and could destroy everything. Boom! Crack! The 8th elder's protective divine light collapsed in an instant, and his head exploded in an instant, turning into fragments and blood that scattered in the sky. Of course, his godhead was also shattered into pieces by the golden sword and scattered from the sky. The 8th elder died just like that. He was also killed in one hit. The headless corpse fell from the sky, spraying divine blood. At this moment, the deputy region master of Ganyang region's godhead fragments, armor, divine artifact fragments, and his interspatial ring fell to the ground. A faint fluctuation flashed through the seemingly ruined and scorched earth. The godhead fragments and interspatial ring that fell into the ruins were swallowed by the earth and disappeared. The next moment, these items all went into Zhou Xian's interspatial ring. The region master of Ganyang region witnessed the deputy region master and the 8th elder being killed in one hit. He was scared out of his wits and his face turned ashen. The deputy region master's strength was lower than his, so it was fine that he was killed by Long Tian in one move. However, the eighth elder's strength was similar to his, so he couldn't escape the fate of being killed in one move. Didn't this mean that if Long Tian had made a move against him earlier, he would be the one to perish now? The most terrifying thing was that Long Tian had launched 2 sneak attacks in a flash. Until now, Governor Ganyang could only see Long Tian's figure and a rough outline of his face. He couldn't even see Long Tian's face and expression clearly. Not to mention the information about Long Tian's strength, realm, and the way he attacked. Terrifying. It was too terrifying. We all underestimated him. No wonder he would be hunted down by the Tao Tai clan, and even Patriarch Tao couldn't do anything to him. I can't get involved in this mess anymore. Otherwise, I won't be able to keep my life. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Protectorate Master Ganyang fled toward the north without looking back. He unleashed all of his divine power and raised his speed to the limit. After 2 godly kings were killed by Ji Tianqing in a row, the 4 godly kings within 70,000 miles all sensed that something was wrong. The 6th elder and 7th elder of the Xianxia clan, as well as the region master and deputy region master of the Clear Sky domain, all used their divine senses to investigate the general situation. Although they didn't witness the death of the 2 godly kings with their own eyes, they knew that something had happened. Long Tian, who was hiding in the dark, launched a sneak attack and killed 2 godly kings in a row. Immediately, the 4 godly kings were abnormally vigilant, and their hearts were in their mouths. They immediately rushed toward the scene of the incident and spontaneously gathered together. Everyone had the same thought. It was easy to be ambushed if they were alone, so it was safer to gather together. Of course, the 6th elder and 7th elder didn't forget to send a message to the left protector while they were flying. The left protector was the strongest and the most confident. He had already flown 100,000 miles away to expand the search area. Just as the 4 elders were frantically rushing, their divine senses detected that Protectorate Master Ganyang, who was fleeing for his life, was also in a tragedy. Swoosh! Right in front of him, a spatial fluctuation flashed and a figure appeared out of thin air. White robe, black hair, handsome and heroic, shining with golden light, sacred and dignified. If it were any other day, this dragon youth would be worthy of such an evaluation. But at this moment, in Protectorate Master Ganyang's eyes, this guy was a ferocious and terrifying demon. Long Tian actually didn't launch a sneak attack from behind. Instead, he appeared in front of him openly and waved his sword to kill him. This undoubtedly showed that Long Tian was very strong and had enough confidence to quickly finish him off. But Protectorate Master Ganyang had long been terrified. The moment he saw Ji Tianqing appear, he didn't hesitate to adjust his direction and teleport to the left to escape. What made everyone even more speechless was that while he was teleporting to escape, he didn't forget to shout, "Sir, please spare my life. We have no enmity between us. I won't be your enemy anymore. I'll retreat now." But it was a pity. Before Protectorate Master Ganyang could finish his words, his teleportation was interrupted. That's right. It was his teleportation that was interrupted. At the same time he used his teleportation ability, Ji Tianqing's left hand grabbed at him and clenched hard. Suddenly, the space laws descended and sealed the space within 1,000 miles. Moreover, terrifying space divine power erupted, crushing and shattering the space within 1,000 miles. Pachakata. With a crisp cracking sound, the space within 1,000 miles completely collapsed and became chaotic. Protectorate Master Ganyang's teleportation was forcibly interrupted, and he immediately suffered a backlash. His face was pale and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The divine power in his body was chaotic and his mind was also affected. His consciousness was a little blurry, and his heart was filled with horror and fear. It's too terrifying. He actually used the space laws to crush the space within 1,000 miles? I've already begged for mercy, but he still wants to kill me? Governor Ganyang knew very well that only 8th or 9th Heaven Realm upper divine kings could cultivate the law of space to such a level and possess such terrifying divine power to crush the space forcefully. Unfortunately, he just wanted to do the Tao Tai clan a favor and cozy up to them, but he encountered such a terrifying guy. He was so unlucky. If he had known that the treacherous brat that Tao Yongxing said was actually such a terrifying big shot, he would not have participated in this matter even if he was beaten to death. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing raised his right hand, and the sword of burial of heaven lit up with golden light again. He slashed at Protectorate Master Gonyang across the air. Bam! Another muffled explosion resounded through the sky. Protectorate Master Gonyang used the last of his strength to condense a divine light shield and raised the divine saber above his head to block, but it was still cut in half by the giant sword. Divine light splashed and blood splattered. The two halves of the corpse fell from the sky, and more than 20 pieces of divine spark fragments fluttered like butterflies. Ji Tianxing's figure disappeared again and merged with heaven and earth. Now he had a deeper understanding of the armillary sphere secret technique. Not only did he use it as the strongest defense and concealment technique, but he also used it for assassination and teleportation. Chapter 36-35. 3 godly kings were killed in a row, all in one move. The 4 godly kings who rushed over to help all witnessed the process of Domain Lord Gonyang's death with their consciousness. While they were shocked by Long Tian's strength and methods, they also understood one thing. Long Tian was ruthless. Even if Domain Lord Gonyang admitted defeat and fled, even if he gave up his dignity and begged for mercy, he still couldn't escape death. This meant that he would not let go of anyone who participated in this assassination plan and attempted to kill Long Tian. The pressure on the 4 godly kings immediately increased. They felt a chill run down their backs and their eyes became extremely solemn. It seems that today will be the end of a fight to the death. There's no possibility of reconciliation. That kid disappeared again. I think I know what his invisibility is all about. Oh? Tell me, how did he do it? The 4 godly kings quickly gathered and rushed to the place where Domain Lord Gonyang was killed when they were thousands of miles away. Along the way, the godly kings communicated with each other through voice transmission. Xianxia clan's 7th elder's words piqued the interest of 6th elder, Clear Sky Domain Lord and Deputy Domain Lord. They were full of anticipation. 7th elder frowned and thought for a moment. Then he said to everyone in a low and cautious voice, "We searched everywhere within 100,000 miles and even the alternate dimensions, but we couldn't find him. However, his aura is everywhere. What does this mean? It means that he's in this world, but he's in a different way. That's why we can't find him." Clearsky Domain Master was a very qualified supporting actor. She hurriedly asked, "7th elder, in what way does he exist?" 7th elder pointed at the ground under his feet and said meaningfully, "We searched the sky, the earth, and the alternate dimensions, but we missed one thing. Perhaps the land within a radius of 100,000 miles was transformed by him?" His words awakened the dreamer. The other 3 were shocked and then showed complicated expressions. 6th elder didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He muttered with a stifled expression, "Even if he used Earth-type abilities, it's very difficult to do that, right? Moreover, the battle just now destroyed everything within a radius of 20 to 30,000 miles. If he really transformed into the Earth, wouldn't he have been seriously injured?" The Clear Sky Territory Master revealed a look of sudden realization and nodded repeatedly. 7th elder is wise. This is very likely the truth. The position of the Deputy Region Master was slightly lower, so he was not in a position to play the supporting role. He did not have the guts to question him, so he could only reveal a thoughtful expression. The 7th elder's face was expressionless, but his eyes were firm as he said, "Although this conjecture sounds a little ridiculous, this is the only answer. As for the specifics, the truth will be revealed once the left protector catches that brat." As the 4 of them talked, they had already arrived at the place where Protector Gonyang was killed. Unfortunately, Ji Tianxing had long disappeared. Domain Lord Gonyang's Godhead fragment and spatial ring had long since fallen to the ground and been devoured by the earth. The 4 divine kings stopped in the sky and stood back to back. They formed a battle formation and vigilantly watched their surroundings. "That brat is hiding again. We can't split up. We must maintain our formation and prevent him from launching another sneak attack." "That's right. Although we can't prove that the brat has turned into the earth, it is true that he appears and disappears unpredictably. We must guard against him strictly. Everyone, please wait patiently. I have already sent a message to the left protector. He will soon join us. When that time comes." The 4 divine kings looked as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Their nerves were tense and their postures were very vigilant. They probably felt that this was a little funny and humiliating. Therefore, the 2 elders and the Clear Sky Territory Master said some self-comforting and self-justifying words. After all, they were all honorable upper divine kings and region masters. They had always been high and mighty, reserved and arrogant. Now that they were scared to this extent by Ji Tianqing, it was really embarrassing. However, before the sixth elder could finish speaking, a dazzling divine light suddenly lit up 70 to 80,000 miles away. A pillar of light shot up into the sky. Everyone's heartstrings had been stretched taut. They were suddenly a little stunned by the sudden change. Over there, what's going on? The seventh elder asked subconsciously, looking a little confused. The clear sky territory master frowned and said in a low voice with an ugly expression, "It seems that someone is fighting?" He could only vaguely see the divine light shining in the sky. He wanted to use his divine sense to investigate, but it was beyond the range of his divine sense. The deputy region master simply shut his mouth. He was the weakest and had no right to speak. The sixth elder suddenly thought of something and his expression changed drastically. He let out a cry of surprise. "Oh my God! That damned bastard actually went to sneak attack the left protector." As soon as he said this, the other three were dumbfounded. What? That guy was here just now. In the blink of an eye, he ran 70 to 80,000 miles away? How is this possible? Even if it's teleportation, it can't be so fast, right? Even if there is such a fast teleportation, there must be divine light and spatial fluctuations. Is that guy crazy? The left protector is an 8th stage upper divine king. How dare he sneak attack him? Although the four divine kings had listed Ji Tianqing as the most dangerous enemy and overestimated his strength. But he suddenly appeared 70,000 miles away and attacked the left protector. It was hard to believe and they were filled with shock. After being stunned for a moment, the sixth elder calmed down and shouted with a gloomy face, "Don't just stand there. Let's go and help the left protector to kill that guy." This suggestion received the support of the three divine kings. The four of them hurried towards the northwest to help the left protector as fast as they could. In fact, the sixth elder's guess was completely correct. After Ji Tianqing killed 3 divine kings consecutively, of course he would continue to sneak attack the remaining 5 divine kings. However, the sixth elder, the seventh elder, the clear sky region master and the deputy region master were very shameless and gathered together. The 4 of them formed a battle formation as if they were facing a great enemy. This gave Ji Tianqing a headache. If he fought the 4 of them head-on, he could use all kinds of remarkable skills and trump cards to kill all 4 of them. But in that case he would expose himself and leak more information. Moreover, it would delay time. Therefore he decisively changed his target and locked onto the lone divine king 80,000 miles away in the northwest. The left protector of the Xianxia clan. This was an 8th stage upper divine king who had cultivated for over 20,000 years. He was a veteran divine king with profound skills. So he was very confident and dared to search around alone. He was not worried about his own safety at all. He was even worried that he could not find Long Tian and could not wait for Long Tian to assassinate him. But in Ji Tianqing's eyes, the left protector was not much different from the 4 divine kings. Whoever was left alone would be his target. Just like that, Ji Tianqing used the spherical heaven secret technique and appeared 80,000 miles away and decisively attacked the left protector. Chapter 36:36. When Ji Tianqing appeared out of thin air and attacked from behind, the left protector was overjoyed. "Ha! I was looking for you everywhere. I didn't expect you to walk right into my trap." The left protector received a message from the sixth elder and knew that Ji Tianqing had already killed 3 god kings. Therefore, when the space behind him rippled and a dazzling sword light lit up, he didn't even need to turn around to know that Ji Tianqing had attacked. His face was filled with mockery as he sneered. He took the opportunity to use his ultimate skill and slashed his sword behind him. Hellfire explosion. The left protector roared angrily as his body swelled up. His entire body lit up with a blood-red light. He held a blood-red heavy sword that was more than 10 feet long with both hands and swung it forward. In an instant, boundless hellfire explosions surged out from the heavy sword that was as wide as a bench and covered the sky. Everything within tens of thousands of miles was lit up by the dazzling fire. With the left protector as the center, everything within tens of thousands of miles around him became the domain of hellfire explosion. The dark purple sea of fire surged as if it could burn everything in the world. Bam, 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 bam. The dazzling golden sword light that was more than 1,000 feet long collided with the hellfire explosion that was more than 10,000 feet long. An earth-shattering boom erupted. The left protector was very confident in his ultimate skill. However, the result caused him to be filled with shock, and he revealed an expression as if he had seen a ghost. The hellfire explosion that was more than 10,000 feet long was actually shattered into pieces by the golden sword light and exploded in all directions. However, the power of the golden sword light didn't weaken much as it continued to slash toward him. Bang! The left protector frowned and shouted coldly. He held the blood-red heavy sword in front of him with both hands. The wide heavy sword that was more than 10 feet long emitted an endless amount of blood-red light that turned into a thick and solid divine light barrier. Bam! The huge golden sword and the divine light barrier collided and exploded with a dull boom. Then both of them collapsed at the same time and exploded into millions of divine light fragments. Crack! Along with the crisp sound of the explosion, the terrifying impact sent the left protector flying backward. He tumbled high up in the sky, his face twisted and ferocious, purple divine blood spurting out from his mouth and nose. Only after flying for more than 200 miles did he manage to neutralize the terrifying impact and stabilize himself. Damn it! That kid's strength is actually so strong? The left protector hurriedly circulated his martial arts to regulate his breathing and suppress the injuries of his internal organs. His face was full of fear as he let out a low cry. Previously, when the clan leader assigned him to carry out this mission, he did not tell him that this dragon clan youth's strength was so terrifying. If he had known this would happen, he would not have underestimated the enemy and brought only 3 elders with him. Before they set off, he and the other elders were still discussing and mocking the Taotai clan for being trash who couldn't even kill a young man from the dragon clan. Now he finally understood the reason. However, he wasn't happy at all. He even regretted it. Just as these thoughts flashed through the left protector's mind, she had already lost track of Zhou Xian in the surging hellfire sea. In the next moment he appeared behind the left protector and brandished his sword to use his ultimate killing move. Sword of Destruction. Zhou Xian shouted coldly. His left hand formed a sword sign and his right hand held the Burial of Heaven sword. He stabbed with all his might. He had absorbed 2 portions of the world power and released it through the amplification of his sword principle superpower. Suddenly, a dazzling golden sword that was as long as 1,000 feet engulfed the left protector's body. The left protector's eyes widened. He was filled with fear and despair. He had tried to teleport to escape and he had also thought of teleporting to dodge, but it was useless. When the golden sword radiance appeared, the area within a radius of 10,000 miles was sealed by an invisible power of the rules of nature. Even if he used all his strength, he couldn't break free from the restraint of space. He couldn't escape or dodge at all. He could only choose to block and take the blow head-on. My life is over. The left protector exclaimed in his heart. He held the blood-red sword with both hands and slashed with all his strength. Ancient sky-splitting slash. The left protector roared. The blood-red sword in his hand burned like lava and became crystal clear. It released a crescent-shaped sword radiance that was 10,000 feet long. This sword strike similarly contained his lifetime's worth of divine energy and over 200 types of divine Dao laws. This was his trump card, one of his strongest killing moves. Kaboom! The 2 sword radiances, one golden and one red, clashed together with a loud sound that shook the sky. The blood-red sword radiance that was 10,000 feet long was cut in half by the golden sword. It shattered into dozens of pieces and scattered in the sky. Meanwhile, the golden sword of destruction didn't slow down at all. It struck the left protector again. Crack. Compared to the collision of the 2 sword radiances, this sound was insignificant. The left custodian's protective godly light, his armor and his indestructible godly body instantly shattered like ice or mirrors. His body exploded into pieces on the spot, mixing with the purple rain of blood. Pieces of armor and robes splashed down from the sky. Only his godhead was preserved. He took advantage of the chaos to escape through the rain of blood and fled north in panic. The destruction of the god body was, of course, a terrible wound and ending. However, if he could preserve his godhead, there was still a chance for him to rise again. Therefore, the left protector didn't waste any time to threaten or care about the other 4 divine kings. There was only one word in his mind. Run. Unfortunately, Zhou Xian was able to destroy his divine body in 2 moves, so how could he possibly allow his divine core to escape? I went to such great lengths just to obtain your godhead. If I let your godhead escape, wouldn't I have suffered a great loss? The left protector's godhead had just fled 8,000 miles when Ji Tianxing's cold laughter sounded beside it. He was instantly peerlessly terrified. His godhead trembled and he let out a sorrowful and indignant roar. "Get lost. If you kill all of us, the Xianxia tribe won't forgive you." As he roared, the left protector didn't hesitate to use 5,000 years of power and burn more than 40 types of divine Dao laws to use a forbidden divine ability. Instantly, his godhead ignited with a bloody flame, and his divine power aura increased by 5 times. His escape speed increased several times, reaching the speed of light as he fled north. Normally, when god monarchs flew, they were said to be as fast as lightning or as fast as the aurora, but that was only to describe their speed. However, the left protector's situation was different. He had truly reached the speed of light. To be honest, this speed was extremely terrifying. Even if Ji Tianxing unleashed all his power and used all his trump cards, he wouldn't be able to reach the speed of light. In the next instant he would be left behind by the left protector, and then he wouldn't be able to catch up. See, the left protector's desire to live was so strong. He erupted with a speed that even he couldn't believe. At the same time he had reached his limit. Although this power and speed could only last for an instant, it was enough for him to escape hundreds of thousands of miles. Chapter 36-37. The left guardian had paid a terrible price. This forbidden ability not only consumed 5,000 years of his cultivation, it also burned 40 over types of god Dao laws. The most important thing was that after casting the technique his power would weaken until he fainted. But to be able to escape from Long Tian's evil clutches and successfully survive, it was worth it no matter what price he had to pay. That was what the left protector thought when she fled at the speed of light. However, his thoughts had yet to end when a scene that made him lose all hope appeared. The sky around the godhead had unknowingly started to distort and fold. What was more terrifying was that in the distorted sky, a dazzling white light appeared and actually formed a blazing white wall with a radius of 100,000 miles. That was a forcefully condensed space barrier using space laws. This was too much. Bam! Without a doubt, the left guardian's godhead crashed fiercely against the blazing white wall. A muffled sound exploded and reverberated through the sky. The blazing white space barrier also shook violently from his collision and exploded with intense space fluctuations. The speed of the left guardian's godhead was too fast. That was the speed of light. But he crashed against the space barrier at the speed of light. The result was obvious. Kacha. His godhead was smashed into pieces and numerous cracks appeared on its surface. Suffering such a heavy injury, the left guardian's consciousness became hazy and he gradually fell into a coma. Before he fell into a coma, his heart was filled with unwillingness and there was only one thought in his mind. Why did it turn out like this? He had obviously paid a huge price and sacrifice to reach the speed of light which only peak god kings could reach, so why did he still fail? The space within a radius of 100,000 miles was sealed and solidified, and even forcefully formed into a space barrier? Could it be that Long Tian's control of space laws had reached such a terrifying level? Then the left guardian's consciousness fell into darkness and he completely fell into a coma. Zhoush. The blood-red godhead, which was full of cracks, dimmed and fell from the sky. At this moment, Ji Tianxing used the Turbid Heaven secret skill to move close to 100,000 miles and rushed to the side of the godhead. He waved his hand and the cracked godhead entered his hand. You're a Xianxia clan's senior after all. Even if you're only in the 8th stage realm, you can't be underestimated. Luckily I had a trick up my sleeve. You almost got away. Ji Tianxing looked at the godhead in his hand and muttered to himself. After this battle he also clearly understood the extent of his combat strength. He should be at the peak of the 8th heaven of King God realm. God kings below the 8th level were basically insta-killed. Even an ordinary 8th stage realm god king could be easily killed. As for veteran god kings like the left protector, they possessed great heritage and many trump cards. It would take some effort to slay them. Even if he met a 9th stage realm god king, he should be able to maintain an undefeated record, right? At least he wouldn't be injured by a 9th stage realm god king like in the past. Ji Tianxing collected his thoughts and crushed the divinity of the left protector and put it into his spatial ring. Then he found the left protector's spatial ring and put it into the ring as well. After doing all this he glanced at the sky in the south. With a wave of his hand he removed the spatial barrier within a radius of 100,000 miles. His figure returned to heaven and earth. 100,000 kilometers to the south. The sixth elder, the seventh elder, the clear sky region ruler, and the vice-region ruler were all rushing forward excitedly. Earlier they saw a blood ray and fire ray soaring into the sky in the northern sky. It should be the battle between the left protector and Long Tian. They rushed over as fast as they could to provide support, but they discovered something strange on the way. The location where the blood ray and sword ray appeared was actually moving towards the north. This meant that one of them was fleeing while the other was chasing after them. The four god kings immediately concluded that Long Tian was escaping in a sorry state and the left protector was chasing after him. Other than this result, there was absolutely no other possibility. After all, the left protector's skills were profound and he was powerful with many tricks up his sleeves. They must hurry over and assist the left protector to kill Long Tian so that they could gain some credit. If they were late, they could only clean up the battlefield. As a result, the four god kings rushed over as fast as they could as they let down their guard and forgot to maintain their formation. The four of them had different abilities, so the speed at which they rushed over was different. Sixth elder and seventh elder had the strongest abilities, so they flew at the front. The second strongest was Clear Sky Domain Master, who was 5,000 miles behind them. Deputy Clear Sky Domain Master, who was the weakest, was at the back of the group and was 8,000 miles away from Clear Sky Domain Master. After Ji Tianxing returned to heaven and earth, he transformed into a 200,000-mile world. Everything in this area was under his watch and supervision. Seeing the four god kings' postures and expressions, he immediately understood what was going on. Hee. They probably think the left protector is chasing after me and want to gain some credit and benefits? He sneered in his heart and teleported 50,000 miles, appearing behind sixth elder and seventh elder out of thin air. Absolute shadows of the 10 directions. In order to end the battle quickly, Ji Tianxing shouted coldly and used his trump card. Golden light flickered all over his body as 5 figures appeared in the sky around him. They were all identical to him. The 6 heavenly dragons were all handsome and mighty. They wielded the Heaven Barrier sword, but they executed different supreme sword techniques. 7-star sword. Heaven cleaving sword. Heaven piercing sword. Heavenly dragon proud slash. The 6 Long Tians were scattered in the sky, forming an encirclement of 20,000 miles. This encirclement was neither big nor small, just enough to envelop 6th Elder, 7th Elder, Clear Sky Domain Master and Deputy Domain Master. Immediately after, dozens of dazzling sword lights with supreme divine might rain down like floodwaters and drown the 4 god kings. The 4 god kings were imagining how the left protector would trample on Long Tian and how Long Tian would be beaten up miserably. How could they guard against the sudden appearance of 6 Long Tians and the incomparably valiant attacks? This was not a sneak attack at all. It was a completely open encirclement. No, this was not the main point. Long Tian? How is he still alive? This is impossible. Wasn't he being chased by the left protector and his life was at stake? Long Tian is actually safe and sound and there are 6 of him? Our eyes must be playing tricks on us. We must be hallucinating. Could it be that the left protector has already died? When the sword lights descended, the 4 god kings were dumbfounded. They looked terrified and hopeless. The next moment, the sword lights drowned their figures. Bam, 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 boom, 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 kaboom, kaboom. A wave of earth-shattering, deafening and heaven-shaking explosions resounded endlessly in the heavens and the earth. Divine light flashed. In the chaotic sky, the 4 god kings were cut into pieces on the spot. Not even their corpses were left. Their bodies were minced into pieces. Blood rained down from the sky along with fragments of divine weapons and armor. As for their godheads, they were also chopped into pieces and scattered all over the ruined land. After a short while, peace was restored. The interception plan had come to an end. Chapter 36-38. After leaving the battlefield, Ji Tianxing continued to head north. Next he had to cross the Ganyang region and another 8 regions before reaching the northern border of the Star Source continent. At that time he would head to the Golden Rock clan's 9 mystical paradise to pay a visit to the Golden Rock old ancestor. Swoosh. The burial of Heaven's sword was still speeding through the clouds while Ji Tianxing stayed in the sword world and entered the divine pagoda to deal with the spoils of war. The battle just now sounded very long, but it actually only took a quarter of an hour. Ji Tianxing had killed 8 God King powerhouses and instantly killed 18 God Lord realm elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall. His harvest was bountiful. Those God Monarch realm elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall had nothing to say. Ji Tianxing didn't care about their Godhead fragments. After all, even if he spent time refining them, he wouldn't obtain many God Dao laws and couldn't absorb much God power. There was no other way. He was already a peak 5th degree God King. Only the Godhead shards of middle God Kings and high God Kings were effective against him. Even if it was a lower Divine King's Divine Spark fragment, the effect it could have was also limited. It was better than nothing. In the distorted space, Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged under the blood flame sacred tree and began to count the spoils of war. First was the interspatial rings of the 18 Blood Slaughter Hall elites. These experts were all elites of the Xianxia clan. Although they weren't too rich, they were still much richer than ordinary upper God Kings. Ji Tianxing sorted out the cultivation resources in the 18 rings and put them all into his own interspatial ring. Roughly estimating, he obtained about 200 billion God stones worth of resources. Of course, there weren't any king-grade God artifacts or resources. Most of them were God Monarch grade. Ji Tianxing put the 200 billion God stones aside for Wushuang, Bai Long, Hei Long, Qian Yu, Lin Shui and others. Then he began to check the interspatial rings of the 8 God Kings. These God King experts were either elders of the Xianxia clan or domain lords of the Clear Sky and Ganyang regions. Basically, they were all people with great power and authority. Their wealth naturally far exceeded ordinary God Kings. Ji Tianxing spent half a day to organize the 8 spatial rings. He had obtained a huge amount of cultivation resources, a large number of king-grade materials, pills, divine artifacts and treasures. The value of these resources was hard to estimate. But a conservative estimate would put the combined wealth of the 8 godly kings at close to 2 trillion. In addition to the resources and wealth in his interspatial ring, his current wealth was close to 3 trillion. As the saying goes, a horse won't get fat without feeding at night, and a man won't get rich without a windfall. With this windfall, it's enough for me to cultivate to the high-level God King realm and support everyone to cultivate to the God King realm. Ji Tianxing put away the interspatial ring and revealed a satisfied smile. With a large amount of king-grade treasures and resources, he could push Wushuang, White Dragon, Lin Shui and the others to the King God realm. Moreover, these people's talents and aptitudes were originally 1 in a million geniuses. In addition, it was worth mentioning that he had obtained many king-grade materials for forging weapons, refining pills, and setting up formations from the space rings of the 8 divine kings. Fortunately, among these materials, there were herbs that he urgently needed to refine the 9-turn stellar elixir. Now he had the Star Eater flower, 9 sets of supplementary materials and 17 sets of herbs. He could finally start refining the 9-turn stellar elixir. However, Ji Tianxing was not in a hurry to refine the elixir. First he meditated for a while. When his divine power and mental state had recovered, he took out the Godhead fragments of the 8 godly kings. I'll refine their Godheads first, then focus on refining the 9-turn stellar elixir. If I can successfully break through to the 6th level of the Divine King realm, the success rate of refining the 9-turn stellar elixir should be 95%. After all, the 9-turn stellar elixir was a high-grade king-grade divine elixir. It was the rarest and most precious type. Moreover, the refining method was extremely complicated. The energy and mental energy consumed was several times more than other similar elixirs. It was difficult for an ordinary high-level God King to refine it successfully. With Ji Tianxing's current strength, he only had an 80% chance of success. As the materials were hard to find, he did not want to take the risk. He would rather raise his strength first. Swoosh. Soon he grabbed a handful of Godhead fragments in each hand and used the engulfing divine power to refine them. White light appeared in his palms and formed a white light vortex. It gradually devoured the energy of the Godhead fragments. Dazzling 5 colors divine light surged out of the Godhead fragments and was absorbed into his body. Next he used the power of the heaven-mending orb to refine the 5 colors divine light. When the 5 colors divine light turned into pure divine power, he would truly absorb it for his own use. It had only been 4 hours since Ji Tianxing killed the 8 godly kings. At this moment, in the star cloud city of the Xianxia tribe in the Nebula Cave, in a dazzling gray palace filled with the vicissitudes of ancient times, the guardian spirit who was in charge of guarding the spirit temple rushed into the main hall with a pale face. Tribe leader. Tribe leader, something bad has happened. Stumbling into the great hall, the spirit protector cried out sorrowfully before he even saw the Xianxia clan leader. The dozen or so guards who were guarding the hall all looked at each other. They frowned at the same time and revealed doubtful expressions. In their eyes, the guardian spirit guarding the spirit temple was a very leisurely job. He basically did not show his face. Even if something happened, it had nothing to do with the spirit temple. How could the spirit protector be like this? What in the world happened? Soon, the guard captain stopped the guardian spirit and asked about the situation. What's the commotion? Be careful of your head if you disturb the Lord's cultivation. The guard captain angrily glared at the spirit protector and coldly shouted in an unfriendly tone. The guardian spirit did not have a high status and did not have any real power. No one was afraid of him. The spirit protector took a few deep breaths and said with a pale face, "Quickly take me to see the patriarch. I have an important matter to report." Something important? Could it be that the sky has fallen? The guard captain sneered disapprovingly. However, he still brought the guardian spirit to the Xianxia tribe leader's study. Not long later, the guardian spirit saw the Xianxia tribe leader resting with his eyes closed in the messy and old study. The Xianxia tribe leader had a rough personality. He did not like reading, nor did he like music, chess, calligraphy, or painting. The study in the palace was just for decoration. He usually slept in the study with his eyes closed. Who knew how many precious ancient books he used as a pillow? The Xianxia tribe leader was woken up by the guardian spirit and frowned unhappily. He asked sternly, "What's made you so flustered? Has your ancestral grave been dug up?" The spirit protector took a deep breath and suppressed the panic and anxiety in his heart. After his aura stabilized, he bowed and reported in a low voice, "Patriarch, the soul spirit tablets of the left custodian, the 6th elder, the 7th elder, and the 8th elder are all broken." What? The Xianxia tribe leader's eyes widened and he jumped up from his chair. Chapter 36-39. The left guardian and the 3 elders' divine spirit tablets are all broken? Zhou Xian, the leader of the Xianxia clan, glared at the spirit protector and roared with a twisted face. An invisible pressure burst out from his body and enveloped half of the palace. Immediately, the spirit protector was intimidated by the powerful divine aura and fell to the ground with a plop, his body trembling uncontrollably. Even the guards around the study were shrouded by the terrifying pressure and knelt on one knee, not daring to raise their heads. Zhou Xian's roar was so loud that half of the palace heard it. At the same time, everyone understood what it meant for the divine spirit tablets to be broken. Every member of the Xianxia clan had a divine spirit tablet, which was kept in the spirit temple and guarded by the spirit protector. No matter where the Xianxia clan was, once they died, the corresponding divine spirit tablet would be broken. The reason for this was that the Xianxia clan's bloodline was thin and there were only close to 10,000 of them. To the leader of the Xianxia clan, the life of every member was very important. But now, the powerful left guardian and the 3 elders had died at the same time. This news was no less than a bolt from the blue. There was dead silence in the study. After a long time, Zhou Xian came back to his senses. He frowned and asked fiercely, "When did this happen?" The spirit protector trembled on the ground and replied with a trembling voice, For 4 hours ago, bastard. Why did you only report what happened 4 hours ago now?" Zhou Xian roared furiously and raised his foot to kick the spirit protector. The spirit protector was kicked and rolled a dozen times. He crashed into the wall and rolled in the ruins, blood spurting out of his mouth and nose. But he didn't dare to heal himself. He quickly climbed out of the ruins and returned to Zhou Xian. Blood flowed out of his mouth and he replied in a hoarse voice, "Leader, please calm down. This is too shocking. I wasn't sure, so I used a spell to check several times. At the same time, there were 18 divine spirit tablets broken. All of them were elites of the blood slaughter hall." One could imagine how dumbfounded the spirit protector had been 4 hours ago when he saw the 22 spirit tablets shatter. This kind of thing had not happened for hundreds of years. It was as if there was something wrong with the spirit tablet. He was filled with fear. He didn't dare to be sure and he didn't dare to report the news himself. He could only cast the spell over and over again, using various methods to check the spirit tablet to see if there were any mistakes. The study fell into dead silence again. Zhou Xian slumped into a chair with a dejected look. His face was as cold as ice and his hands could not stop trembling. Every Xianxia clansman's life was very important to him. It was related to the Xianxia clan's prosperity and the hope of unifying the Star Source continent. But now 22 of them had died. Furthermore, the left protector and the 3 elders were also among them. They were the cornerstones of the Xianxia clan, the most powerful warriors. After a long time, Zhou Xian waved his hand and coldly shouted, "Scram!" As if he had been granted amnesty, the spirit protector hurriedly bowed and left the study, leaving as if he was fleeing. Damn Tao Yongxing. Could it be that you're willing to pay such a huge price for my help? You've offended a powerful being from the Dragon Clan, yet you've made my clan pay such a huge price. If I don't make you vomit blood this time, how can I be satisfied? Zhou Xian cursed with a ferocious expression, his entire body surging with murderous intent. It was only now that he realized how powerful the powerful being from the Dragon Clan that Tao Yongxing was chasing was. Although he really wanted to bring the right protector and a few elders to kill Long Tian personally to avenge the left protector and the rest, the Xianxia clan had already paid such a huge price. However, the Xianxia clan had already paid such a heavy price. He was not willing to sacrifice a few more elders. Even if he wanted to kill Long Tian to avenge the left protector and the rest, he had to consider it at length. He would not take the lead again. He had to let the powerful beings from the Taotai clan be the cannon fodder. Hence, he calmed down and thought for a long time before taking out a communication jade slip and sending a message to Tao Yongxing. In the northwest of the Clear Sky region, 5 million miles away from the border. In a certain city, the Taotai clan leader Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and Tao Yuxing were resting in a house. Of course, godly king experts like them did not need to rest even if they had to travel continuously for 10 days. The main reason they stopped here was to wait for the other 2 elders. In the past few days, the 3 of them had been shaken off by Ji Tianxing and chased in the wrong direction. However, Tao Yongxing had detected Ji Tianxing's location in time and asked the 2 territorial lords and the Xianxia clan's godly king to help kill him. Then they also changed direction and rushed towards the northwest, wanting to meet up with the powerful beings from the Xianxia clan. At this time, the chaotic situation in the Taotai clan had already calmed down. The 2 elders were left in the star-devouring cave to lead the clan members to rebuild their homes and heal their injuries. The other 2 elders rushed to this city through the teleportation formation to meet up with them. The high priest held a teacup in his hand, but he was not in the mood to drink tea. He kept spinning the teacup and muttered to himself, the 2 elders should arrive within 15 minutes. Previously, the clan leader had detected that Long Tian's aura was at the border of the 2 regions. If there were no accidents, the powerful beings from the Xianxia clan and the 2 territorial lords should have already intercepted Long Tian. However, why is there no news from the Xianxia clan? Tao Yuxing also had the same question. He held his teacup and drank tea, but his gaze drifted towards Tao Yongxing. Tao Yongxing's expression was calm as he said calmly, "That kid's strength is not ordinary and he is very cunning. I am only worried that the Xianxia clan's godly king and the 2 territorial lords will lower their guard and be careless. Don't let that kid slip away from under their noses." Tao Yuxing said worriedly, "That can't be right? If the left guardian of the Xianxia clan can't even do this, then his ability needs to be tested." Tao Yongxing was about to explain when a spiritual light flew from the sky and landed in front of him. The spiritual light dissipated and a communication jade slip appeared. Tao Yongxing hurriedly picked up the communication jade slip and his eyes flashed. He said, "It's a message from Zhou Xian." After saying that, he used his divine sense to read the message in the jade slip. The high priest and Tao Yuxing both remained silent, but they looked at him expectantly. After a while, Tao Yongxing's expression changed. His brows furrowed tightly and his eyes became extremely serious. The high priest and Tao Yuxing both realized that something was wrong and asked in unison, "Clan leader, what's wrong?" Tao Yongxing put down the jade slip and said with a dark expression, "The left guardian of the Xianxia clan, 3 elders, and the territorial lords and deputy territorial lords of the 2 regions, a total of 8 godly kings and 18 elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall intercepted Long Tian at the border, and both sides fought a fierce battle. However, all of them were killed by Long Tian." "What?" the high priest and Tao Yuxing exclaimed at the same time. The teacups in their hands fell to the ground and shattered. Both of them were dumbfounded and their faces were filled with shock. Their bodies also seemed to have turned to stone. Chapter 3640. This is too frightening. This person's strength is actually so terrifying. After a long time, the high priest and Tao Yuxing came back to their senses. Their expressions were very ugly. The atmosphere was very heavy and oppressive. Although those who died were not from the Tao Tai clan, the three of them did not have the mood to gloat. They all felt great pressure. Tao Yongxing added in a low tone. However, that kid killed everyone and also suffered heavy injuries himself. He's fleeing with injuries. The high priest frowned and said thoughtfully, even so, Long Tian's strength is very terrifying. He's not even below me. Previously in the star-devouring grotto heaven, he might have been worried that we would besiege him, so he was in a hurry to escape. It's hard to imagine what kind of damage he would bring to our clan if he went all out and fought with us in the star-devouring grotto heaven. Tao Yuxing hesitated for a moment before plucking up the courage to ask, "Clan leader, high priest, then should we continue to pursue him?" Seeing the two turn their heads to look at him with sharp gazes, he immediately shrunk his neck and explained, "I'm not afraid. I just feel that we don't need to make any more sacrifices. Even if we intercept him and have another big battle, we can kill him to avenge our clansmen. However, we're bound to lose a few more elders. At that time, even if he dies, we'll also suffer heavy injuries. It'll be hard for us to recover for thousands of years." The high priest's sharp gaze immediately became much gentler. After thinking for a moment, he also nodded in agreement. "Clan leader, our losses are already great enough. Please reconsider." Tao Yongxing was silent for a moment before he grinned coldly and said, "Things have already reached this point and you want me to stop now? Our clansmen are already dead, the mine has been snatched and the Tao Tai clan's face has been lost. Now you want me to give up? Then what face does our clan have? How will we convince the masses in the future? How will we intimidate the surrounding regions?" The high priest and Tao Yuxing immediately fell silent. Tao Yongxing continued, "The Xianxia clan also lost a protector and 3 elders. If I give up now, will Xueshang agree? Do you want to break the alliance between the 2 clans and make Xueshang and our clan become enemies?" The high priest was speechless. Tao Yuxing hurriedly waved his hand and apologized with a face full of shame. "This subordinate knows his mistake. Please calm down, Patriarch." At this moment, in the sky not far away, 2 beams of divine light flew over from the city. Tao Yongxing raised his head and glanced at them. He said expressionlessly, "The 2 elders have arrived. It's time for us to leave. Let's go to the battlefield at the border to check out the situation first, then meet up with Xueshang and join forces to kill Long Tian." The high priest was stunned for a moment. He asked in disbelief, "Xueshang is going to do it himself?" Tao Yongxing nodded and said expressionlessly, "That's right. He wanted to avenge the dead protectors and elders. However, he added 2 conditions. Firstly, he wants to double the conditions we agreed on. Secondly, he wants Long Tian's corpse and godhood." Tao Yuxing frowned and said somewhat angrily, "Does that mean that Long Tian's dragon tribe bloodline belongs to Xueshang?" Tao Yongxing said in a deep voice, "The dragon bloodline belongs to him. The Phoenix bloodline and the Golden Rock bloodline belong to me." The high priest and Tao Yuxing fell silent. Even though this deal was a huge loss no matter how one looked at it. However, this was something that could not be helped. For the dignity of the Tao Tai clan, they had to do it no matter what. The burial of Heaven's sword already flew continuously for an entire day. While Ji Tianxing just happened to be in closed seclusion cultivation for 50 days in the distorted spacetime. The 8 divine kings' godhood fragments were all devoured and refined by him. Previously, he still thought that it required some kind of lucky chance and life-threatening danger before it could stimulate his potential and break through to the 6th-level divine king realm. He did not expect that after he refined 8 sets of godhood fragments and deprived 40 kinds of divine Tao laws, he broke through smoothly. After all, those 8 divine kings' strength was not ordinary. The quality of the godhood fragments was extremely high. Not only were there 5 middle-level divine kings, there were even 3 high-level divine kings. The most important thing was that there was a left protector with a deep foundation among them who had cultivated for over 20,000 years. He was an 8th-level realm divine king. Now, not only did Ji Tianxing reach the 6th-level divine king realm, his strength increased by more than 6 times. The divine Tao laws that he grasped also reached as many as 580. Even if he faced a 9th-level Realm Divine King expert again, he could also put up a fight and be more relaxed. After he ended his cultivation, Ji Tianxing opened his eyes and a gratified smile appeared on his lips. I thought that I would need the 9-turn star rhyme pill to break through to the 6th-level Divine King realm. I didn't expect it to be so smooth. This is all thanks to those few Divine Kings, especially the left protector of the Xianxia tribe. His power alone is comparable to that of 4 domain masters. Ji Tianxing calculated that he would save the 9-turn star rhyme pill for when he broke through to the upper-level Divine King realm. After all, there was a huge bottleneck from the 6th-level Divine King realm to the 7th-level Divine King realm. If there was no major lucky chance, it would be very difficult to break through. According to the previous plan, Ji Tianxing would open the furnace to refine the 9-turn star rhyme pill after he finished his closed-door cultivation. However, he recalled something very important. Hence, he left the distorted spacetime and headed towards the 3rd level of the Divine Pagoda. Swoosh! A white light flashed and Ji Tianxing appeared in the cold and gloomy wasteland. His divine sense spread out and covered a radius of 70,000 miles. Very soon he found Baifeng. That was the center of the wasteland, and there was an oasis with a radius of 1,000 miles. There were mountains and rivers, and the scenery was very pleasant. Right above the oasis, there were 9 divine pearls floating in the sky, and they were shining with a dazzling golden light, illuminating the entire oasis. Whereas in the depths of the oasis, there was a majestic golden palace built on top of a lofty mountain that was 3,000 feet tall. The palace was surrounded by divine light and white clouds. There were also colorful birds and beasts. Not only were there spirit cranes, there were also various rare spirit birds. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing was slightly stunned, but he immediately understood something as a smile appeared on the corners of his lips. He flew across tens of thousands of miles in the sky and appeared outside that magnificent palace. Not long later, he saw Baifeng, who was circulating her energy to recuperate in a secret room in the palace. Did you do all this? Ji Tianxing looked at her and asked with a grin. Baifeng was a little wary and hurriedly explained, "This space is too dark and desolate. It's completely unsuitable for cultivation and recuperation. Therefore, I moved a portion of the mountains, rivers, and living beings from my inner world here. Only by living in a place like this can I be at ease and cultivate." Clearly, she was worried that Ji Tianxing would reprimand her and ask her to remove the mountains, rivers, and palaces. She was really unwilling to continue sitting in the cold and gloomy wasteland. That feeling was like being imprisoned and exiled. It was too shabby. Unexpectedly, Ji Tianxing did not reprimand her. Instead, he smiled and said, "You've cultivated an inner world? I didn't expect that you've also mastered the power of faith and raised an entire world's people?" Baifeng's expression was slightly awkward. She could only nod and did not explain further. Chapter 3641. Before Ji Tianxing ascended to the God realm, he had told the people around him that there were many God monarchs and God kings in the God realm who cultivated the power of faith. Under normal circumstances, they would cultivate their inner worlds or use some kind of divine weapon to create a world. They would create countless living beings in that world, and all of them would worship them. They would use that to gather the power of faith. This method could quickly increase one's strength without wasting a lot of time and energy. Many God monarchs and God kings favored this method. However, in the eyes of many orthodox cultivators of the divine way, this was an unorthodox method. Therefore, God monarchs and God kings who cultivated the power of faith were in the minority. However, Ji Tianxing knew that this was also a type of divine way that had been passed down since ancient times. It could not be considered an unorthodox method. Although he did not have any prejudice against this method, he did not have any intention of acknowledging it or cultivating it. Otherwise, he would have used the power of faith in the sword world long ago and created countless living beings. As for the 5 elements world, on the surface, it seemed like billions of living beings were under his control and protection. However, in reality, he had only merged with the 5 elements world and did not make billions of living beings worship him. At this moment, Ji Tianxing mentioned the power of faith. Baifeng was worried that he would reprimand, obstruct, or deny it, so he hurriedly changed the topic. "Master, do you have any instructions for me?" Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said, "It's not really an instruction. I just want to ask you about something." "Ask me for advice?" Baifeng was stunned and looked at him with a strange expression. He was in disbelief. In his opinion, Ji Tianxing was almost invincible, omniscient, and omnipotent. How could he ask him for advice? Don't look at me like that. I'm not omnipotent. Ji Tianxing saw through his thoughts and explained, what I want to ask is the divination technique you are best at. Back in the boundless heaven continent, you helped those god envoys to find my location and traces. When this matter was mentioned, Bai Feng immediately became spirited and explained excitedly, the reason why I could find your location across a few regions is because of my divine eye of annihilation. This is the inherited talent of my race and it happens to have this effect. Of course, using the divine eyes of annihilation to track a target wasn't something that could be used casually. Only by coming into contact with the target and planting a special divine aura in the target's body could the deduction be successful. If you want me to track down a complete stranger, I won't be able to do it. After listening, Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said thoughtfully, in that case Tao Yongxing was able to track my location and traces, most likely using a similar method. Previously when I fought with him he must have left some kind of special divine power or clue in my body. However, when I was recuperating and cultivating in seclusion, I checked many times and didn't find any trace of his divine power. Not only his divine power, but even the 4 divine powers of the Taotai clan were nowhere to be found. Bai Feng also frowned and after pondering over it for a moment she spoke out in a grave tone. Tao Yongxing is a 9th stage realm god king who has cultivated for over 20,000 years and the depth of his cultivation and the profoundness of his methods are far above mine. But even so, his method of tracking you should be the same as mine. No matter if he used some kind of divine ability, innate talent inheritance or some kind of god relic, he must have left some clues in your body. Speaking of this, he paused for a moment and spoke out in a solemn tone. Lord, I feel that there's a possibility that the divine power which Tao Yongxing left in your body might be extremely special. Not only is it extremely concealed, it doesn't belong to the Taotai clan, nor does it belong to his own power. Ji Tianxing nodded his head and said, and there's this possibility. Thank you for your analysis and reminder. I'll go back and do a thorough check. We must remove the clues which he left behind as soon as possible. Otherwise he might keep on chasing after us like a lingering spirit. Saying that, Ji Tianxing left the 3rd story space. Bai Feng looked at his disappearing back view in the white light and a smile appeared on her face. After some time later he muttered to himself, previously I always thought that Kenshin was omniscient and omnipotent, high up in the air and could only be looked up to. I'd not expected that Kenshin would also have times when he couldn't understand. He's not much different from ordinary god kings like us. This is good. When I interact with him in the future I won't have to be on my guard or be on my guard. Unknowingly, Bai Feng's impression of Ji Tianxing had undergone a subtle change. In the past he'd always thought that Kenshin was high up in the air, cold and aloof. He could only be looked up to and could not be approached. However, now he realized that Kenshin was also human. There was no need to deliberately keep a distance when interacting with him. Thinking about it this way, he suddenly felt that being a guard for the sword god was not something that was unacceptable. Ji Tianxing returned to the distorted space and sat cross-legged under the blood-flame sacred tree. Thinking of Bai Feng's reaction just now, the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Although I'm not good at tracking secret techniques, if Bai Feng can think of something, how can I not? In fact, he had already guessed the answer when he was cultivating in seclusion and breaking through to the 6th level of the God King realm. He had only used this as an excuse to intentionally interact with Bai Feng and let her see his flaws. He wasn't as perfect as she had imagined. This was the only way he could gradually eliminate the estrangement and wariness in Bai Feng's heart. Ji Tianxing knew very well that if he wanted to control an expert like Bai Feng, he would not be able to obtain her loyalty by merely using force and coercion. In his previous life, although he appeared cold on the surface, he was actually proficient in all kinds of controlling techniques. Otherwise, he would not have so many followers and establish such a huge force. To him, controlling Bai Feng was very easy and simple. Soon, he threw this small matter to the back of his mind and began to circulate his energy to inspect his body. Previously, when he was cultivating in seclusion, he had inspected his body many times. However, he did not find the 4 types of divine powers that the Taotai clan usually used. He also did not find Tao Yongxing's energy aura. Now that he had changed his mind, he began to inspect his body again. He did not let go of any trace of blood, flesh, tendons, bones, fingernails, or even hair on his head. As for his internal organs, sea of consciousness and Godhead, they were the focus of his inspection. Time passed quietly. A quarter of an hour, half an hour had passed. After 2 hours he had inspected his body from inside out 10 times. He even checked every drop of blood in his body. In the end he still did not find any abnormal energy or traces. I can confirm that there is nothing abnormal in my body. Then where are the traces and clues that Tao Yongxing left behind? Ji Tianxing frowned and pondered for a moment. Suddenly he thought of something and his eyes lit up. He quickly left the distorted space and flew out of the sword world. He appeared at the top of the sea of clouds. Chapter 3642. Whoosh. It was noon and the sun was high in the sky. The Heaven Barrier sword was like a bolt of pitch-black lightning as it flew over a vast lake. Suddenly, Ji Tianxing flew out of the sword world and appeared beside it. Burial of Heaven, stop for a moment. He spoke to buried heaven through divine telekinesis voice transmission. Burial of Heaven didn't understand what was going on, so it quickly stopped and asked, "What's wrong?" Ji Tianxing reached out to hold the divine sword, glanced at the vast lake below and landed in the lake. Whoosh. He dove into the rippling lake and dove down to the bottom of the lake, creating a temporary cave at the bottom of the lake. After using 2 formations to seal the cave, he took out the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Pagoda and entered the distorted spacetime with the Burial of Heaven. After a while he returned to the Blood Flame Sacred Tree, holding the Burial of Heaven with both hands and carefully observing it. Burial of Heaven, when I fought with Tao Yongxing and the others that day, were you injured? Burial of Heaven realized that there was a problem, so it answered truthfully. Tao Yongxing and the few divine kings of the Taotai clan all used king-grade high-grade divine artifacts. Although the battle was very short, I was indeed injured. However, they were all minor injuries, so I didn't tell you. In these few days, I have been silently absorbing divine power to slowly heal my injuries. I should be fully recovered in a month. Ji Tianxing thought to himself, as expected, and asked again, "Then did you feel anything strange in these few days? For example, were there any special forces or traces of the blade's injuries?" This Burial of Heaven was silent for a long time, then it said in a low voice, "I checked it carefully but I didn't find any special forces or traces. However, there are a total of 5 injuries on the blade. I have been trying my best to heal them, but only 4 injuries are healing. One of the injuries doesn't seem to be a big problem, and it is also very light, but there are no signs of recovery." Hearing this, Ji Tianxing vaguely guessed the answer. He hurriedly held the sword of Burial of Heaven and carefully examined it, looking for any damage on the blade. However, the damage to the Burial of Heaven was not on the surface, but on the internal structure of the divine sword. It was impossible to see with the naked eye. Therefore, Ji Tianxing could only use his God's Eye secret technique to carefully examine the internal structure of the divine sword. Not long after, he found 5 damaged areas from the extremely complicated internal structure. Under the guidance of the Burial of Heaven, he eliminated the 4 damages and finally locked onto the unrecoverable damage. At first he couldn't tell what was wrong with the injury. However, Ji Tianxing activated his divine sense and performed his ultimate skill. Finally he found some clues. In that extremely small and negligible damage, there was actually a wisp of gray qi that seemed to be there but not there. "I've finally found it." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows as a glint flashed across his eyes. That wisp of gray qi was less than 1/100th the size of a strand of hair. There were no ripples of divine power and it seemed to have no attribute. Ji Tianxing was sure that this wisp of gray qi had nothing to do with the Taotai race or Tao Yongxing's divine power. However, it was this inconspicuous wisp of gray qi that had exposed his tracks and routes to Tao Yongxing's detection. The Burial of Heaven also realized and said with some self-blame, "No wonder Tao Yongxing could grasp our tracks. I hadn't thought that he would be so cunning. I was careless this time. Otherwise we wouldn't have been ambushed." Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and then a meaningful smile appeared on his face. He said, "You don't have to blame yourself. This may not be a mistake. Maybe it is our chance." "Chance? What chance?" The Burial of Heaven stilled and instinctively asked. Ji Tianxing said with a smile, "A chance to counterattack." "What do you plan to do?" The Burial of Heaven vaguely guessed his thoughts and asked. You'll know in a while." Ji Tianxing chuckled and began to cast a spell to retrieve that wisp of gray qi. At the border between the Ganyang domain and Clear Sky domain, the place where Ji Tianxing was ambushed previously had already become a wasteland with a radius of 100,000 miles. Flying across the sky, even from tens of thousands of miles away, the wasteland was still very conspicuous. At this time, Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and 3 Taotai race elders were standing above the wasteland, observing with solemn expressions. There was another group of people tens of thousands of miles away. They were also circling in the sky, carefully observing the battlefield. That group of people were Xianxia race experts. There were a total of 22 people. However, the strange thing was that there were only 2 God King experts in this group. The other 20 were all upper divine lords. The 2 God Kings were naturally Xianxia race clan leader Zhou Xian and right protector Min Tai. The 20 upper divine lords were all wearing blood-red armor. They were naturally the elites of the blood slaughter hall. Zhou Xian personally went out, but he only brought the Xianxia race's 3rd strongest expert, right protector Min Tai. He did not bring an elder with him. This was because even someone as powerful as the left protector had been killed by Long Tian. It was meaningless for him to bring the elders. Instead, it would be life-threatening. The Xianxia race had already suffered heavy losses. They could not lose even one more elder. As for the elites of the blood slaughter hall, even if 20 of them died in battle, it would not be so regrettable. Both sides observed the battlefield for a while before gathering together to meet. Tao Yongxing cupped his hands at Zhou Xian and asked, "Clan leader Zhou Xian, did you find any clues?" Zhou Xian sneered and said expressionlessly, "You personally fought with Long Tian. You know his strength and methods best. Why ask me?" Clearly, Zhou Xian was very angry and blamed Tao Yongxing for hiding the truth. Tao Yongxing was a little embarrassed. He hurriedly changed the topic and said, "It happened not long ago. Only a day has passed. That kid is seriously injured and should not have escaped far. I'll execute the secret art right away and investigate that kid's whereabouts and position. This time we'll join hands. No matter how great that kid's ability is, he'll also die without a doubt." Although Zhou Xian harbored resentment towards Tao Yongxing, but these few sentences of his, Zhou Xian still agreed very much. His eyes surged with a malevolent glint as he laughed coldly and said, "The Xianxia and Taotai 2 clans' strongest people have all moved out. 4 ninth stage realm divine kings joining hands, who can stop them? He's not the Dragon Emperor, so of course he'll die without a doubt. If we fail again this time and let him escape alive, you guys just slit your own throats and commit suicide." Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and the 3 Taotai race elders' expressions were rather gloomy. "Why should we commit suicide? If that kid escapes, won't you lose face?" This thought flashed across the 5 people's minds at the same time. Of course, this matter was because they had a request from the Xianxia race, requesting the Xianxia race to come forward and help. Therefore, this sentence could only be thought about in their hearts and could not be said out. Immediately, Tao Yongxing took out the Chaos Primordial Bell and started invoking the art to investigate Ji Tianxing's position. Zhou Xian also took out a king-level upper-grade divine ship and personally steered the divine ship, bringing everyone to fly towards the north. Chapter 3643. There were teleportation arrays between the continents and regions of the Dragon Realm. There were also teleportation arrays between the main cities of the Clear Sky region and the Ganyang region. However, the teleportation arrays between the cities and regions were heavily guarded with layers of protection. Only people of high status were qualified to use those teleportation arrays. Because of the teleportation arrays, Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and Tao Yuxing were able to make it back in time after being shaken off by Ji Tianxing. Now the experts of the 2 clans had joined forces to kill Ji Tianxing and had to use the teleportation arrays to make it back in time. Zhou Xian drove the dark red divine warship and sped through the sky, heading straight for the main city closest to the border. There was a teleportation array in the main city that could teleport to an imperial city in the middle of the Ganyang region. Even if Ji Tianxing had been running for a day, they could still make it to the front to intercept him. In the main hall of the divine warship, Tao Yongxing used a secret technique and quickly found Ji Tianxing's location. That guy ran really fast. He actually escaped to the Surging Sun Empire. Currently he seems to be in the Surging Sun Lake. Tao Yongxing sat cross-legged in the main hall. The primordial chaos bell became 1 foot tall and floated in front of him. It spun slowly and flashed with divine light. He closed his eyes and used his mind to sense Ji Tianxing's location. The right guardian of the Xianxia clan who was guarding the main hall hurriedly reported to Zhou Xian when he heard the words, "Surging Sun Lake." Xiang immediately planned their route. They would first enter the main city at the border and use the teleportation array to reach the imperial city of the Surging Sun Empire. Then they would drive the divine warship to the Surging Sun Lake and kill Ji Tianqing on the way. After a while, Tao Yongxing suddenly raised his eyebrows as if he had understood something. He immediately grinned coldly. That guy is in the Surging Sun Lake. Why hasn't he moved after so long? Could it be that I understand. He must have been severely injured and hid in the Surging Sun Lake to recuperate from his injuries. He can't run away now. Just wait for death. Hearing Tao Yongxing's laughter, the high priest and the other elders looked expectant. Their eyes flashed with cold light. The distance from the border of the Ganyang region to the Surging Sun Empire's Surging Sun Lake was a total of 20 million li. Even if Xiang personally steered the divine ship, it would still take him 20 hours to arrive. However, with the divine teleportation array and the time taken to travel, it only took them 2 hours to reach the imperial city of the Surging Sun Empire. Then Xiang steered the divine ship and left the imperial city, rushing toward the gushing Sun Lake that was 300,000 miles away. Everyone knew that the heavily injured Long Tian was currently hiding in the gushing Sun Lake to recuperate and had not moved for a long time. This time it was the best opportunity to kill Long Tian. When Xiang thought about how he would soon be able to obtain the Dragon Clan's bloodline and the high-level Divine King's dragon corpse, his heart was filled with anticipation. At the same time, the death of the left protector and the 3 elders had brought him a lot of relief. Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and the others' feelings were similar to Xiang's. Although they could only obtain the blood of the Rock Clan and the Phoenix Clan, they could avenge their clansmen by killing Long Tian. Most importantly, the Taotai clan's face and dignity were preserved. 45 minutes later, the blood-red divine ship that was thousands of feet long and shaped like a sharp shuttle arrived in the sky above the gushing Sun Lake. Under the golden sun, this huge lake with a radius of close to 50,000 miles was a scene of rolling waves and sparkling waves. This place was rich in divine power and resources. So many spirit beasts and demonic beasts were hiding in the lake. However, when the divine ship arrived, it brought with it an invisible pressure that caused many spirit beasts and demonic beasts to flee in panic. Those that could not escape in time hid in caves and lairs at the bottom of the lake, trembling. They did not dare to move at all. Xiang followed the direction Tao Yongxing pointed and steered the divine ship toward the center of the lake. That kid is in the center of the lake. He should be hiding at the bottom of the lake. Head southeast about 20,000 miles away from us. That's right, Xiang, you'd better conceal the aura of the divine ship so that you don't wake that kid up. Tao Yongxing pointed the way for Xiang while reminding him to hide. Xiang did not think much of it and smiled confidently. Since you're sure that the kid is still in the lake, he's definitely dead. Do we need to conceal our aura? Even if he wakes up and starts to run now, he won't be able to escape from me. Ha ha. Tao Yongxing laughed dryly and could not help but say, it's better to be careful. After all, that kid is very cunning. In a flash, the divine ship swept across 20,000 miles of the lake. After reaching the center of the lake, Xiang immediately put away the divine ship. Swoosh. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Tao Yongxing and the 4 Taotai race god kings, Xiang and the 21 Xianxia race experts all appeared above the lake. Everyone spread out and surround this place. Be careful. Tao Yongxing and Xiang ordered in unison. All of a sudden, everyone spread out and formed an encirclement with a radius of 2,000 miles above the lake. Other than the 2 clan leaders, everyone took out their divine weapons and accumulated divine power in their bodies. They looked at the lake with vigilance. Tao Yongxing and Xiang were empty-handed and stood above the lake calmly. The 2 looked at the calm lake under their feet and could not help but sneer. That kid still hasn't noticed that we're here. There's no reaction at all? It looks like he's seriously injured and has no time to care about anything else. While sneering, Xiang waved his hand and sent out a dazzling divine light into the calm lake. Immediately, the lake water within a 100-mile radius was refined and disappeared into thin air. The dark red blood light formed a shield with a radius of 100 miles and a depth of 10,000 feet, separating the center of the lake from the rest of the world. Everyone could clearly see that there seemed to be a cave among several huge rocks at the bottom of the lake. Those rocks were protected by 2 divine formations and were flickering with a faint divine light. Tao Yongxing looked at the rocks and sneered mockingly, "Long Tian, hurry up and come out to meet your death." The rolling sound waves contained a soul-shaking power that penetrated the two divine formations and enveloped those rocks. However, those rocks did not respond. Ji Tianxing also did not show up. Xianxia frowned and vaguely had a bad premonition. He waved his hand and sent out several dazzling blood-red sword lights. Bang bang bang. Immediately, the two divine formations protecting the rocks were shattered by the blood-red sword lights. Those rocks were also cut open by the sword lights and rolled to the side. A dilapidated cave was revealed. Above the rubble on the ground, there was a crystal ball the size of an egg. Inside the translucent crystal ball, a tiny wisp of gray gas could be vaguely seen. However, Ji Tianxing and the Sword of Burial of Heaven were nowhere to be seen. Seeing this scene, the expressions of Tao Yongxing, Xianxia, and more than 20 powerhouses froze, and their faces were full of shock. The next moment, Xianxia and Tao Yongxing reacted at the same time and could not help but exclaim, "Damn it! We've been fooled. Everyone be careful." Chapter 36-44. When they came, they were full of confidence. Who would have thought that after finding Long Tian's hiding place, they would end up empty-handed? Xianxia and Tao Yongxing's reactions were fast and alert. While the god kings and elites of the bloody slaughter hall were still in a daze, the two of them realized that the situation was bad. Not only did they realize that they had been tricked, but they also guessed that this was very likely a trap set by Long Tian. Even though the possibility of the heavily injured Long Tian setting up an ambush for so many experts was not high. Unless Long Tian was tired of living and wanted to die. However, Xianxia and Tao Yongxing were very cautious and did not rule out this possibility. After all, with Long Tian's daring character, nothing was impossible. As Xianxia and Tao Yongxing's exclamations sounded, the god kings and elites of the bloody slaughter hall came to their senses and hurriedly retreated. Everyone's attention was still focused on the rocks and the crystal ball. In their predictions, if Long Tian had set up an ambush here, the key would definitely be the crystal ball. Not only did the god kings and elites of the bloody slaughter hall think so, but even Xianxia thought so. Only Tao Yongxing was different. He stared at the crystal ball for a while and frowned. He cursed in his heart and quickly moved his gaze away to look around. Damn it! The formless primal chaos chi that I left in his sword was actually removed by him? That formless chaotic energy was hidden very well. How could he have discovered it? Without a doubt, that wisp of gray energy was the mark he left in the burial of heaven when he used the primordial chaos bell to fight with Ji Tianxing. With this mark, he was able to track Ji Tianxing's position and escape route and find this place. Now, the formless chaotic energy had been removed and Ji Tianxing had disappeared. Whether or not Ji Tianxing had set up an ambush, his plan to kill him had failed. However, this matter was not over yet. Just as everyone was on high alert, the surface of the lake in all directions suddenly lit up with divine light that soared into the sky. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Tens of thousands of starry sword lights soared into the sky from the bottom of the lake, instantly forming a silver light shield with a radius of 10,000 miles, sealing off this area. The heaven-destroying sword formation formed by 40,000 starry giant swords was formed. The sword formation was activated, releasing a formless pressure and sharp sword chi that pressed down from the sky. Immediately, the expressions of the experts above the lake changed. Their eyes were filled with anger and worry. Damn it! That brat really set up an ambush here. Everyone, don't panic. We have so many people and we even have 2 clan leaders. What are we afraid of? It's fine if that brat ran away, but I didn't expect that he would dare to set up an ambush for us. He's dead for sure. He's too arrogant and conceited. He's courting death. After the initial panic, the experts of the 2 clans quickly calmed down. Seeing Tao Yongxing and Xianxia remain calm, the masters of the 2 clans regained their confidence. In their minds, with 4 ninth-stage realm god kings present, what was there to be afraid of? Other than peak god kings, no one could defeat those 4 experts. At this moment, Tao Yongxing and Xianxia stood above the lake with arrogant expressions. They looked up at the huge heaven-destroying sword formation and opened their mouths to speak. Long Tian, you can actually see through the formless chaos chi that this seat is hiding. This seat indeed has a whole new level of respect for you. But unfortunately, you've overestimated your own ability. If you run away now, you can still save your life. But you actually still want to counterattack. That's too laughable. Tao Yongxing's face hung a cold smile as he shouted loudly like a bell. Xueshang's face was gloomy and his tone was cold as he shouted angrily, "Little beast, are you intending to keep hiding in the dark like a coward? Come out and accept your death. This seed is going to avenge the dead clansmen today." As the billowing voice spread across the sky, the two of them gave off a sacred majesty, causing the god kings and sir gods of the two clans to be filled with confidence and anticipation. Following that, in the empty sky, a white figure appeared out of thin air. Zhoush. That was a youth from the dragon clan who was dressed in a white robe and covered with golden dragon scales. He was handsome and had an imposing appearance. That was Ji Tianxing. He was also within the heaven punishment sword formation. Standing high in the sky, he looked down at everyone from above. "Tao Yongxing, wasn't the lesson that I taught you previously painful enough? For the sake of the Taotai clan's reputation, you sacrificed the lives of all the elders. Do you think it's worth it? For the sake of illusory dignity, you let the clansmen go to their deaths dauntlessly? Or do you decisively stop the pursuit and cut your losses in time? I hope that you can consider it carefully. After all, there is no real deep hatred between us. It's all because you are too greedy." Ji Tianxing looked down at Tao Yongxing expressionlessly and said coldly. The Grand Priest and Tao Yuxing had previously discussed this issue and had suggested it to Tao Yongxing. But Tao Yongxing had rejected it. Now in front of the experts of the two clans, Ji Tianxing had said this. Even if Tao Yongxing had wavered and thought of giving up the pursuit, it was impossible for him to consider it again. He didn't even hesitate at all. He was very confident and overbearing as he shouted angrily, "What a joke! You will definitely die today. I'm about to turn your bones into ashes, and you still dare to spout nonsense here? Why didn't you think of reconciliation when you massacred my clansmen? Now that you are in a desperate situation, you want to beg me for reconciliation? Wishful thinking. I will definitely kill you today and I will tear you into pieces." As soon as Tao Yongxing's voice fell, Xueshang turned to look at him and said expressionlessly, "I said that his body and godhead are mine." If Tao Yongxing tore Long Tian's body into pieces and turned his bones into ashes, then how could he refine the Dragon Clan's bloodline? Tao Yongxing knew that he had misspoken and hurriedly explained, "I just said it casually. Since we have an agreement, of course I will leave his corpse intact." High in the sky, Ji Tianxing retracted his gaze and no longer paid attention to Tao Yongxing. In fact, he had long expected that Tao Yongxing would have such a reaction. And he was only giving Tao Yongxing one last chance before he started the massacre. Then he looked at Xueshang and said expressionlessly, "Xueshang, this is a grudge between me and the Taotai clan. It has nothing to do with the Xianxia clan. If you are smart enough, it's best to take your people and leave. Otherwise, not only will you not get any benefits but you will also sink deeper and deeper." Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, Xueshang sneered disdainfully and interrupted him. "Ah! How laughable and pitiful. Long Tian, is this how you admit defeat and beg to surrender? If you obediently lay down your arms and surrender, kowtow to me and admit your wrongdoings, perhaps I will grant you a quick death." As soon as Xueshang's voice fell, the powerhouses of the two clans laughed loudly. They looked at Ji Tianxing with eyes full of contempt and ridicule. Ji Tianxing still looked indifferent and said calmly, "I have said what I should say. Since you insist on seeking death, then I will grant you your wish."